Noche del 12 de febrero, fiesta de la Candelaria, una ventana, un lucero y un ritmo mestizo y paria. Noche del 12 de febrero, fiesta de la Candelaria, una ventana, un lucero y un ritmo mestizo y paria. Mira que el niño no acabe, sal muchacha que no calle, que todo el pueblo ya sabe que te está creciendo el talle y los senos no te caben en tu vestido de calle. Y los senos no te caben en tu vestido de calle. En la Candelaria cuando llegará.
All right, let's get into it. Who here speaks English and who only Spanish? Everybody English? English? Okay, good. I'm just going to give a little message to people that speak Spanish, just for the record. A la gente que habla español, yo tengo un canal de YouTube y una página web donde tengo un podcast en español y hablo también de estos temas, digamos que estrategia de inversión, cómo analizar el mercado, cómo utilizar las tecnologías. Entonces, juangalt.com, ahí pueden encontrar la versión en español para que se guíen un poquito también hablando de estos temas. En temas de inversión, lo que se llama el DCA, Dollar Cost Average, comprar semanalmente Bitcoin específicamente, está ya demostrado en data que es una muy buena estrategia, no tanto con otras criptos, pero con Bitcoin sí. All right, so we're going to talk about the cypherpunk future. Good. And the idea here is to sort of explore a variety of the paradoxes and sort of ideas in this space and figure out maybe what success looks like. I think to me that's the key question. What does success look like? And I think to the degree to which we don't answer that question, we're not really going to succeed. So just for the record, I mean, I'm a podcaster. I've been making content for 10 years in Bitcoin and crypto. I've worked for Bitcoin Magazine, Cointelegraph, BitcoinNews.com. Got a lot of content out there. I'm part of an HBO documentary with some wild anarchists. If you're interested in some fun, go check that out. It's called The Anarchists. And yeah, there's a few of them here, by the way, in that HBO documentary. So some of you that know me might be wondering, like, hold on, Juan Galt, aren't you a Bitcoin maximalist? What are you doing at a Monero conference, right? And I think that the answer to that is I think we need our values to be a little bit bigger than any single implementation. I think we need to be, we don't want to end up being like crypto partisans, right? I think that would be a mistake. We want to identify our values and push technologies that take us there, right? And so I would say I'm a paranoid crypto anarchist. Who here is a paranoid crypto anarchist? All right, we have like 5. I'll take it. You know, that's pretty good. You're too paranoid to raise your hand. That's probably good OPSEC. Great OPSEC right there. And so, okay, so we're paranoid crypto anarchists. Some of us are willing to admit it, not paranoid enough. But what is a paranoid crypto anarchist? I'm going to submit some ideas. I mean, there might be, this isn't like an exhaustive list, but obviously some of the big memes in let's say, the cypherpunk ethos is don't trust, verify. Don't trust, verify means like, you know, just double check, right? And I think cryptographically speaking, that means verifying the cryptography involved. So, right, anybody that fell for the Bitcoin BSV sort of correct right thing, sorry, you're not verifying. Not very cypherpunk of you. But maybe you can pick up a lesson there, because you know one way we can tell if Satoshi is if he actually signs a message with the early Bitcoin private keys, right? So that's key. Being able to verify and not trust it. How's the audio, by the way? Feeling a little echoey. Is good? It's good. Okay, good. I think cypherpunk should take self-custody. I think self-custody is a very clear and obvious value of the cypherpunk. If you have all your Bitcoin in an ETF or in Coinbase, all your crypto, then you're not really a cypherpunk. You're kind of trusting, and you're not really, you know, you don't have your own keys. You're outsourcing it to somebody else. So I think self-custody is a key piece. I think cypherpunks build in public. They build open source code. I don't really care to debate whether source available or FOSS is that big of a deal. As long as you can read the code on it, that's good enough for me, but I get that that's a debate there. But building public is huge because we get strength and security in this world of sort of cypherpunk, this cypherpunk vision. We get security from people being able to audit the code and look at it and give feedback and provide constructive feedback and negative feedback. And when you have closed source software, you're trusting and you can't verify. So not very cypherpunk. We also encrypt everything, right? Just encrypt all the messages, encrypt everything, all the encryption, make sure it's extra encrypted. That's generally a good policy, especially messaging and stuff like that, like your cloud storage, right? Generally, that's sort of part of the ethos of the crypto anarchist cypherpunk. And yeah, that's probably a good thing. And authenticate with cryptography. And I think I'm going to sort of talk in this theme a little bit more. I think we have there's a Leviathan rising. There's this sort of monster rising that's a combination of AI and centralized platforms. And we're going to see identity collapse. And cryptography is the only thing that can save it. The only thing that can really probably protect us from deep fakes and from AI abuse is going to be, I think, cryptography. So some memes I think that we're facing right now, right? We saw with Elon Musk's acquisition of X, memes like, identify all the humans, right? So if you want a check mark, everybody can get a check mark. You pay $8, but you gotta send them a phone number that's easily KYC'd. He wants to ban all the bots. Banning all the bots means somehow filtering, and that's not easy, and that's really the rising challenge. AI can pass the Turing test now. It can pass as a human. It's very easy to confuse people with AI, and that's going to increasingly become actually a problem. And the last question that keeps going around is, who is Satoshi Nakamoto, right? Who is Satoshi Nakamoto? And I think the reason this question is so fascinating is because it's kind of like this annoying moment in history of actually somebody that appears to have done something very powerful and remained anonymous. And there's a lot of theories about who Satoshi is, but they're all debatable. I can tell you like 5 different theories about who Satoshi Nakamoto is, and I could probably convince you with 3 of them. And they're all contradictory, right? So I think Satoshi's anonymity is it's a kind of like light in the darkness, and it ties very deeply with this question of privacy, anonymity, and identity. So the Leviathan is rising. We're all, I think, very aware and conscious of that here in MoneroTopia. And it's a surveillance state. It's a centralization of data, right? And the problem that we have is that anonymity is, while very powerful and attractive, is really not sustainable long-term if you're trying to build, right? It's very hard to maintain your anonymity long-term. In fact, Satoshi lasted about 2 years, and as soon as, in his opinion, with the help of Amir, Takki, and a few other people, actually, who's here, they got WikiLeaks accepting Bitcoin. He said, wow, you guys have rattled the beehive or the wasp's nest, something like that. And he bounced. Like within a week, he was gone, and he probably destroyed his cryptographic keys so that nobody can ever prove that they are Satoshi or not. And we never heard from him again. So Satoshi's approach was very interesting to anonymity. His anonymity was time limited, surprisingly long in my opinion, but like he lasted about 2 years. He was context limited. He, as far as I know, didn't share opinions about much of anything. He was just very Bitcoin focused, and he was project oriented. He had a goal. He wanted to build Bitcoin, deploy it, and when he saw that his risk was going up, he bounced. So anonymity is not sustainable for very long. So just some thoughts on strategy. I think this is sort of somewhat obvious, but I think it's good to put it in paper, right? So you want to have a KYC sort of normie self, right? You want to have something that's, has a tax accountant and stuff, right? Something that's real boring and not a threat to anybody. And then your online stuff, probably make it pseudonymous. You probably want to go spread some memes on the internet, but that's not going to be very high security. That's going to be like mid security, because eventually the odds of it tying back to you are reasonably high. And you end up building brands online and stuff, and that sticks, right? And anonymity I think is sort of like a tactical thing. It's a sniper rifle, right? Like you have an idea, you can have an impact. Maybe you have to you reveal some corruption, or you have a project that needs to be deployed. You get put on the mask, deploy, destroy the identity. I think that's sort of the right approach and the right way to use anonymity. And obviously use cryptography and Tor and all the big toys. What about money though? So we have this issue is that blockchains don't scale, and I know that we've been talking about a little bit about how to scale Monero and stuff. I think there's some really interesting scaling technology there, but I think the general consensus is that blockchains don't scale, and we've had this conversation in this industry for a long time. Bitcoin was designed, a lot of these blockchains are designed fundamentally to deal with this on spent transaction outputs and like dealing with the double spending problem. Double spending problem is like making sure you can't send the same Bitcoin to two different people. That's really their whole approach is to solve that problem. And it's a very tricky problem. And it has, you know, there's this idea like there's no solutions, there's only trade-offs. You know, we made a lot of trade-offs to be able to get digital scarcity. And we've known the limitations and the trade-offs from the beginning. Hal Finney, one of the first hires at the PGP Corporation, one of the key players in the development of PGP, worked on it his whole career. An inventor of RPOW, a proof of work sort of centralized digital cash system in like the 90s, right, was one of the first to really poke some holes into blockchain scalability. He said, Bitcoin itself cannot scale to have every single financial transaction in the world be broadcast to everyone and included in the blockchain. There needs to be a secondary layer payment system which is lighter weight and more efficient. He said this in 2010, and I don't think we've wrestled with it properly, so I'm just gonna run through some quick math. This isn't perfect, but it's sort of, it gives us an idea of how difficult it is to scale a blockchain system to global adoption. So currently Bitcoin can handle more or less 27 transactions per second. The global demand goes between 1,700 transactions per second to 24,000 per second. So Bitcoin on-chain normal can't scale. If you use the Lightning Network, Lightning scales in theory to up to 16,000 transactions per second. It requires 2 on-chain transactions to go in and out securely and scale self-custody specifically, scale that UTXO. And that's tough because even though that's a big scale up, it's still pretty bad. So to onboard 8 billion people, it would require 18 years of transactions, filling 4 megabyte blocks to onboard 8 billion people. So 18 years is a long time. And you might ask, well, bro, why don't you just increase the block size, bro? That's him right there. And the thing is, like, blockchains just don't scale, right? So onboarding 8 billion people in 1 year at 2 transactions each would require about 80 megabyte blocks, or with an average transaction of 250 bytes. That would grow the blockchain about 4 terabytes a year, and full sync would take about 40 days on the average computer. The average computer is about $850, so people would need $3,000 computers or so to be able to sync within the current average, which is about 2 days. So it just becomes very difficult to sync, and thus it becomes very difficult to verify, and thus it stops being paranoid crypto anarchy, starts to centralize. And we end up with node counts like Ethereum or Solana, which is not ideal, I think. And maybe that there's some exaggerations there, but I think the point is sort of pretty sharp, right? Like, blockchains just don't scale very well. So apparently we're stuck in what some people are calling Vitalik's scalability trilemma. I don't know if he actually invented it, but it's pretty sharp. You can only have basically 2 of these. You can have scalability, you can have security, and you can have decentralization. You can only have 2 of these 3. That's what we're dealing with. So Hal proposed a solution to this, and the solution was actually worse than the diagnosis, in my opinion. It was really troubling for my paranoid crypto anarchy bones. He said Bitcoin-backed banks will solve these problems. He said they can work like banks did before the nationalization of currency. Different banks can have different policies, some more aggressive than others, some more conservative. Some would be fractional reserve, others would be 100% Bitcoin-backed. Interest rates may vary between them, and cash from some banks may trade at a discount from that of others. This is the way that private banking worked before the central bank sort of system emerged and kind of took over the gold reserves and did that whole play right before the First World War and such, if I remember correctly. So I believe this would be the ultimate fate of Bitcoin. He doomed us to this issue, this question, to be the high-powered money that serves as a currency for banks that issue their own digital cash. That's rough. That's rough because I love self-custody. I think self-custody is the thing that we actually need to scale. I think scaling works when you centralize everything, you know, it scales, it's fine, but then you don't have self-custody, and so you don't have that crypto anarchy. So I think we need to scale self-custody, but it's quite tricky. So what did he mean by digital cash, though? So in the 90s, actually, like 1982, David Chaum invented something called eCash, Chaumian eCash. And it's a sort of, it's a digital cash that has very attractive properties, I think, as a fellow sort of paranoid crypto anarchist. It's very scalable. and it's potentially incredibly private. It doesn't need any information from you, really. It's just like this little token file you download and you can share it around, and it settles. Just has one big problem. It's very, very custodial. But anyway, this is actually an interface for eCash from the 90s. This thing almost made it into Windows. David Chaum had a deal with Bill Gates that was almost went through. Bill Gates offered him $30 million to install this into every Windows copy, and he offered $30 million to David Chaum. David Chaum declined and asked instead for $1 per every Windows copy, and the deal fell through. But we almost had eCash, dollar-denominated eCash, but eCash, which is, again, very private, very scalable, in every Windows copy. Instead, we got credit card payments, which are pretty bad for privacy. So just a quick question. Who here has an idea of how electronic or eCash works? Nobody? Okay, great. So basically, there's a bank. They take your money, right? You send them Bitcoin or whatever. So it's very custodial, entirely custodial. They issue a cryptographic certificate saying, well, here's what I owe you. It's an IOU. And then when you send it to somebody else, you pay them, they grab the certificate, send it to the bank, and the bank credits their account, right? And they can withdraw the Bitcoin or whatever, right? And this is the original way to do it. In the Bitcoin world, we've been developing eCash systems now for like a few years, and there's a couple of big implementations. The idea is Bob is charging Alice for some money for some payment. So Bob sends Alice a Lightning invoice. Alice grabs the Lightning invoice and her eCash tokens and sends them to the Mint. The Mint destroys the token and pays the Lightning payment. And the Lightning payment makes it back all the way to Bob. Bob gets paid with Lightning. He doesn't have to have a bank account with the Mint. It uses the Lightning network as a settlement layer, as an instant settlement layer for medium to small payments. And so there's no credit relationship. It's all very quick. There's some trust in the Mint. There's definitely trust in the Mint, but it's all fairly, it can be fairly automated. Of course, it'll be very different implementations here and there. So again, eCash is very scalable. You can scale to the whole world because it's like downloading a JPEG, an image file, even less. It has no blockchains, so it's great for payments, very fast as sending a file. Highly private, doesn't require any ID, right? You can just use a VPN, run it through Tor, it'll work, and it's just custodial as fuck. Very, very custodial. So, I mean, we're trying to deal with that problem of custody. So one of the implementations that's trying to like make it a little less custodial is called Fedimint. So the idea is like you get together some trusted elders within your local community, and everybody they build a big multi-sig, and then they have like, guns drawn, and nobody tries to steal from anybody. It's kind of the idea. And I think it's sort of interesting, but as a Latin American, I'm pretty uncomfortable with holding other people's money, like I don't want anybody to think that I'm the rich guy of the village. It's just bad OPSEC, right? So my paranoid crypto anarchy doesn't quite like it, but I think it's interesting. And I think there's ways we can potentially use different scripting technologies to constrain that custody and that trust placed in that group, and then potentially emit eCash stuff. I think there's a lot of potential there, but it's still very early. So yeah, as I said before, like I'm trying not to be a partisan in crypto. I'm a self-custody maximalist. I think we do need to sort of push that forward, but there's some really, really deep challenges at hand. So Hal Finney's analysis, I think, raised some really troubling questions, right? And as an anarchist, as an ANCAP for a long time, or somebody that's been a libertarian for a long time, there's this sort of like antagonism towards banks. And I definitely don't like banks. They're very annoying. They ask, it's like everything is KYC. Their apps are terrible. But, why do we hate banks? Like as capitalists, banks are, they're companies, right? They're kind of a big piece of the market of finance. How do you have, you can't have capitalism without capital, and banks are a big piece of that tradition. It's like a 600-year-old tradition of capital management and capital allocation, et cetera, et cetera. So banks are a very interesting kind of organizational structure. It's just that there's some problems, right? I think Hal's sort of analysis also raises the question, if as libertarians we hate fractional reserve, but if a fractional reserve banking system can emerge in the free market and be stable, is it not statist to demonize it? Are we socialists? Are we like anti-fractional reserve socialists, right? Somebody called Rothbard a gold socialist once, and I thought that was really interesting. But because you wanted to like make it illegal to do fractional reserve, isn't that kind of statist, right? And so yeah, if the free market is not capable of is the free market not capable of correcting the excesses of private banking, right? I think that's a question that we have to deal with, but of course we don't necessarily live in a free market, but these are the questions that I think we have to still wrestle with. And could it be, I think the question more pointed is, could it be that the problem are not private banks, but central banks, right? And I think Satoshi talked about that. Satoshi pointed out that the current sort of way that money settles is through this sort of central bank hierarchy. And with something like Bitcoin, we don't need a central bank hierarchy because we have our own settlement rails, right? So maybe there's an opening to do banking without central banks. Central banks actually are in a very funny position. They're trying to launch these CBDCs, which stand for central bank digital currencies. Central bank digital currencies are literally trying to go straight to consumer. They're trying to make it so that there's no bank in the middle, so that you have an account directly with the Fed. They might like that idea. It might be convenient, but they're basically trying to push out private banks. They're trying to get private banks out of the middle. They're trying to just go bypass the banks, right? And the banks are not going to like that. So banks don't actually like central bank digital currencies. And I think we need to recognize that there's a potential alliance there that's rising. JP Morgan, the guy from JP Morgan, the CEO, what's his name, Jamie Dimon was on MSNBC talking shit about CBDCs the other day. He's like, no, not happening, right? Because they don't want to give up the business, right? It's not convenient to the banks that central banks have a direct relationship with the consumers, right? And so that's going to be an interesting power struggle, I think. So I think the structure looks a little bit like this. There's you, and there's the banks behind you, and then central banks are pointing the gun at them. But then there's the deep state, right? The deep state controls foreign policy, and the reason that they want to build this Leviathan is because they want control over the money to be able to punish their enemies. They want to be able to do sanctions. They want to be able to do censorship. They want to be able to do deplatforming. And they want to control the minds, and they want to control the memes. And that's really, it's about power. But there's a deep power structure in there. And so I think it's important to understand the order of that power structure, And banks, at the end of the day, are like the most consumer-facing sort of side of it. But I still kind of hate banks, not gonna lie. So banks are the gods of the Leviathan. They're the ones that we actually have relationships with directly. They're kind of like zombies. They're like modern zombies. They're sort of propped alive by the inertia of their success. And they authenticate users with face recognition, with names and addresses, and they grab your ID and they check it against a database. The thing is, those databases, they used to be secure back in the day because they were based in paper. You would show up to your bank, and they would look at you and see your ID and go look for your file and take out a piece of paper and be like, yeah, that's you. Okay, I'll access your money. It was very secure in the paper age, right? Because who's going to go into a bank and steal a metric ton of paper, right? If you're going to take paper, you're going to take the cash, not the KYC documents, right? But times have changed. That's not really how it works anymore. Now there's massive centralization of data that gets hacked all the time, and it's actually causing big problems for the Leviathan. The Leviathan is it's kind of weak. So there's actually some good news for people that care about privacy and sovereignty here. The Leviathan is a little tambly. It's a little unstable, and I'm gonna tell you why. There's a very long list of hacks that have happened recently, and I could have had like 20 slides, but Equifax exposed 147 million records, including social security numbers, addresses, to the web in 2017. Marriott, 300 million guest records, such as passport numbers and payment details, were stolen. Anthem, 79 million medical records, including social security numbers. OPM hack, this was great. This was bad, but amazing. 21 million federal employee records, including social security numbers, addresses, names, fingerprints, etc. 40 million payment credit cards from Target, 70 million customer details stolen. Yahoo, 3 billion accounts were breached, exposing emails, phone numbers, and hash passwords. Experia, 24 million South African and 800,000 businesses had personal business data leaked. Facebook, 530 million user records, phone numbers, names exposed. Capital One, 100 million US and 6 million Canadian credit card records were leaked. National public data 2024, 2.9 billion records, including social security numbers and address, have been leaked, impacting nearly all Americans. I thought it was 40 minutes. Yeah, I'll try to get through it. So, long story short, everybody's being hacked. All your data is out in the internet, and identity theft is rising as a result. So, in 2014, identity theft data showed that there was $10 billion more in identity theft in the United States than all other forms of theft combined. So in 2014, $24 billion of theft damages were calculated, out of which 14 billion were identity theft. The identity system of the Leviathan is crumbling. And this has gotten worse, right? In 2021, identity fraud impact, combining both, like all forms of identity theft fraud, rose to $52 billion, affecting 42 million US customers. So in the digital age, data theft is not the exception to the rule, it's the norm. It is the rule. It is what happens. And that's a very like non-ideological reason to not use KYC services. Like your data is not secure, they can't secure it. We have enough history to prove that. They can't secure your data. So the Leviathan is weak. That's good. That's good news for us paranoid crypto anarchists. KYC is imploding. I don't see anybody talking about this, so I make sure to like make that point. And I think we have a shot at victory. I think we have an opportunity to see a world that's a little bit more beautiful, more, let's say, harmonic between the digital and the organic. I think we have to ask what victory looks like. So I'm gonna now tell you guys kind of what we're doing with this very poor quality image that I stitched together in about 10 minutes. But this is the metaphor I've been playing with at this conference, right? So all the gold, 90% of the money is in a walled garden behind multiple layers of brick. And there's dragons that try to protect it, right? And basically Bitcoin just blew a hole through one of the walls, and we have some bridges, and we're like, you know, we're getting close to the gold. Like some of that money's coming out. And the reason Monero doesn't pump is because it's too far away. It's really hard to get the gold from the walled garden all the way here. But as long as these bridges stay up, and as long as there's a hole on that wall, we have a chance. So I think our job as like let's say the purists, the true believers, is to make sure there's bridges and holes in that wall. And then we'll get to sort of access, you know, liberate that gold and have access to it and be able to have the, you know, part of that society-wide crypto anarchist or cypherpunk vision. So yeah, closing call. I think we need to collaborate more. I think we should probably pay close attention to eCash and see where it makes sense to use it, where it doesn't. Again, I think there might be ways to restrain the risks of third-party custody with scripts in various ways, and maybe do some eCash on top of that. I think Bitcoin and Monero have a lot of potential to collaborate, and there's going to be a panel coming up on how to make sure you can easily swap Monero. Like, what are the ways to make sure there's always decentralized ways to trade Bitcoin for Monero? And there's going to be a big, potentially a self-custody push, soft fork in Bitcoin in the not too distant future. I am generally for it. I think there's some things we can do to scale self-custody further. And so I hope that if when that happens, you guys sort of partake in that civil I don't know, disobedience, or that crypto protest, I guess. We'll see how it plays out, but it's going to be interesting. So I'll leave you with this question. What does success look like? Please consider that. Make content, make art. Let's visualize that. And yeah, I think we're all on the same team. I think Monero people and crypto people and Bitcoin people are all really on the same team. So yeah, what I was going to say is I think the Bitcoin people are envious of Monero's privacy. I'll be the first to say it if they haven't said it. I think Monero people are envious of the Bitcoin price rise. I think that's probably true, you know? It's just dropping some bombs, but I think we can work together and maybe get the best of both worlds if we achieve it. So that's it. Thank you so much. Can we do some questions? Do we have time for couple questions?
Great job as always. I just want to quickly say, for those that are at home, we just got xmrchat.com/MoneroTalk working for this stream. So if you're at home and you're watching this and you have any questions, please send a Monero-based super chat by going to the link xmrchat.com/MoneroTalk, and we'll see them pop up on the screen, and we'll bring those questions up over here.
Go ahead.
Question, could you just clarify, eCash is the rebrand of BCHA, is that correct?
BCHA?
The Bitcoin Cash, which forked
No,
to
no.
BSV
No,
and
no, no.
then forked again to BCHA, and then BCHA rebranded to XEC. Are we talking about the same coin?
No. Most certainly not talking about that. eCash is not a coin. eCash is a technology.
Okay.
eCash can be implemented with any coin. So you put a collateral in a little mint, a bank, and then the bank issues digital cash, cryptographic cash. It's a 20, 30-year-old technology. Look up Chaumian eCash. Very powerful stuff. It's just that it's very custodial.
Okay, thanks.
It's not a coin. It would be a great coin. I'm sure it'll pump and dump really nice. Really good.
Oh, thank you for your talk.
The best coin.
Thank you for your talk. I'm going to preface my question by saying something about myself, sort of doxing myself.
Can you speak a little louder? I can't.
Okay. I'm going to preface my question by saying something about myself. I'm 67 years old. When I was 2 years old, in 1959, Bank Americard, which is the precursor to Visa, was launched. My question is, do you believe that current modern blockchains today scale better or worse than Bank Americard did in 1959 with the technology of 1959?
So I don't know, but I think what we're trying to scale is self-custody. I think that's actually the big difference, because we can already scale centralized technology. That's not an issue. Facebook works, Twitter works, banks more or less work, but there's no self-custody there. So maybe you can enlighten us on that.
I'm comparing Visa transaction rates or Bank Americard transaction rates in 1959 when it was released with the technology at the time. Punch cards, telegraph lines, and tabulating machines, which is the primary technology. Digital computers are getting off the ground with the capability of doing transactions on the Visa network or the Bank Americard network. And I'm comparing that with the capability of modern blockchain today. That's what I'm saying. Which one do you think has higher throughput in transactions per second?
They're probably comparable. I don't know. I will have to look into it. I don't know.
Thank you.
Can you tell us which one scales more? Because I don't. That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know.
It is a trick question. I honestly believe the Monero network scales way better today than Bank America did in 1959.
I'll give you this. The Monero scaling design, very, very interesting. Very, very intriguing. So,
And
good stuff. Very good stuff.
The reason I'm saying this is because of technological change. That's what I'm saying. That's what I believe. I believe Monero today scales way better than Bank America did back in 1959.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the goal is 8 billion people, right? Maybe 10 in a decade, so thank you.
Thank you.
Can you comment on, I'm hearing throughout the conference and other crypto conferences, and the conversation always centers around onboarding 8 billion people, the entire planet. I think that's unrealistic and shouldn't be the standard that we're seeking to work off of, especially with the Monero community being cypherpunk anarchist. We don't want to have a mainstream technology that's adopted by every single person per se. I know there was hope for that with Bitcoin early on, but the scaling issues happened. But so what are your thoughts on that? Are you not content to just have our own little cypherpunk utopia? We trade amongst ourselves. At this point, Monero is sufficient. I don't know how many agorists and freedom people are out there.
So maybe that's your vision of success. I think it's not mine. I think there's strength in numbers. I think anonymity benefits from large pools of people. I think if we're small pockets of ANCAPs, we're going to be easily targeted. If everybody is a crypto anarchist by default because we are the technology, we are the finance rails, then it's a lot harder to take it down. So I think there's strength in numbers. And I think the 8 billion people is important because that's the ultimate goal. But yeah, we can grow in waves and scale in steps, right? So again, like on-chain Bitcoin at first was, well, after the block size limit was put in by Satoshi, I think it was like 1 megabyte. We had SegWit, which grew it to about 4 megabytes. And then we got Lightning, which is maybe a 50x scaling improvement. So we're growing it in waves. And I think that's fine. It's just like eye on the price, right?
Hey, nice talk.
Thank you,
And big kudos for bringing your laser eyes to a Monero conference. Nice one. And
It's fun.
On that note, so I feel like this might be a bit of a repetitive question. It's to do with scaling. I'm sitting next to my buddy, who's now behind me. I might be stealing his thunder here as well, but we were both looking at each other, and I think I can probably speak for him, where I think we both believe in Moore's law. So when
Right.
you had your slides regarding the 4 meg blocks and the years it would take, it just all felt a little bit dated.
Sure.
So I don't think it's so much a question here as I want to invite you to leave your small blocks in 2017, ditch your laser eyes before 100K, and come fully over to the dark
Never
side.
ditching the laser eyes. Go to 0, I'll still have the laser eyes. My grave will have laser eyes painted on it.
No, you might get 100K soon, and then you can ditch them, right?
Yeah, I mean, Moore's law might be a thing. I don't know. Like, I think there's been some skepticism about it. Apparently, it's slowed down a little bit. Maybe it'll pick back up. But like, what's the time frame? I mean, how many years will we be able to run a 80 megabyte blockchain, block per block, blockchain on a laptop, right? Is that at 50 years, right? Huh? Right. Yeah, how we get there is in a way less important than where we're going. We'll find different paths, right? But maybe if it turns out Moore's law lets us run 80 megabyte blockchains on a laptop in 10 to 20 years, let's go. Great.
Yeah, to the scaling thing. First off, great talk, and I mostly agree with you. And also like to combine all of the sentiments a little bit. I think for the moment it's yes, we shouldn't worry about scaling to 8 billion people at this second, because it's needs to be a certain mindset, and people learn through pain at certain times, and for the moment Monero works for the communities that needs it, and there's for example a German dude that is unbanked, and now he recommends to his community to use Monero. So it's basically for these people.
Right.
But I agree with you. We should, in the long term, look at the whole world and building something that is usable for everybody, not the tech savvy, and just everybody.
Right.
And I also agree with Arctic Mine and the gentleman before me that the thing with the very restricted block sizes and the blockchains not scaling is yes, at that moment it doesn't really scale, and in the moment we can't scale to 8 billion people, but we can scale better than Bitcoin at the moment, and Monero does it. And I think there's as Luke Parker and so on, there's improvements in cryptography and cryptography and in tech, in Moore's law, and with if you watch the terabyte price for HDDs, and SSDs, they went down over time, and it's it keeps on chugging along, and Moore's law was pretty much dead.
Right. Yeah, the problem is not data storage as much as it is sync time. So when you download Bitcoin Core and you try to sync, if you want to actually verify the history and verify the supply, it's going to take 2 days. And most people just and they never come back. So that's a UX issue, right? Now, there's I know that Monero has different checkpoints and different ways to navigate that stuff. I think that's interesting. I would love to see a apples to apples comparison on that front. But I think if a lot of the Bitcoin sort of, let's say, graybeards came together today and said, okay, if we wanted to design this from scratch, what would we do that would be different than Satoshi's design, right? And you'll probably have very different answers in many of these details, right? But from there to like actually changing Bitcoin is very difficult because we don't want to break it, right? So to some degree, the Bitcoiners are just like working with what we got and like pushing where we can. But you know, so I think there's both two different strategies potentially, right?
Okay, then I actually have a question at that point. Are you aware of that Satoshi like thought about certain features for Bitcoin, but he wasn't like able or didn't know of a way to implement them for this?
Which features?
Like stealth addresses, or yes. I mean, I can like show you that.
No,
like,
I know that
Bitcoin.
Satoshi was surprised by ring signatures, I believe, and I know that stealth addresses were like an early idea that has now been implemented, right? Again, Cake Wallt has stealth addresses, right?
Yes.
So, sure.
Yeah. But another, thank you for the talk.
Cheers. No,
Anyway.
we can talk more if you want. Yeah. Body anarchist.
What's up, Mr. Juan Galt? I guess I don't have a question. You know me, I like to rant. I just wanted to point something out about, I mean, I like the Vitalik's trilemma.
Yeah.
I wanted to point out that decentralization is not the end goal. Decentralization is a means to an end. The end is permissionless, right? Permissionless security. So decentralization comes at a cost, and the problem is that if you over-design to decentralization, then you end up with a network that might be limited, where it might be able to be expanded a bit more. And the reality is that, would it be better to have custodial solutions for poor people in Africa, let's say, or would it be better if they share nodes where they still hold their own keys, they have their own custody, and there's a little bit of that we sacrifice in decentralization, but you still have, let's say, 50,000 nodes running the Bitcoin protocol, right? You can basically trust that the current block is the current block, or at least, you know, from launch until say 2020. Like, do you really need to verify that again for the millionth time? So generally, I'll close out here and just say that I feel like we over-designed to decentralization in Bitcoin, whereas if you just change that equation a little bit, you could gain a lot more scalability really quickly. You could get a lot more people on Lightning, and people could get in and out of Lightning easily. I might even use Lightning myself if you guys just increase the blocks a little bit. Not a lot, I'm not a big blocker, just a like moderate increase.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks, man.
No, that's a conversation. That's a good question. That's a conversation that's sort of coming back, because I think that during the Bcash wars there was sort of like a, you know, this block size thing became like a bone that we couldn't just let go of on both sides. But I think looking back and like analyzing it in a more cool-headed way and without the politics, again, Jameson Lopp just gave a speech about why maybe we should increase the block size and how and when and so on. So, and Jameson Lopp is a, you know, fairly prominent Bitcoiner, you know, not like a super laser IMAX, even though he's pretty close to that. So I think the question is, you know, it's probably never going to be closed, right? Because there's no very obvious answer, I think. But yeah, I mean, if you're suggesting we should be a little bit less paranoid in our crypto anarchy, maybe that makes sense. Different contexts, different trade-offs, different threat models, right? Maybe like as long as, you know, again, like we want to extend the sort of cipher civil rights, cipher security to the world and give the world this gift, whatever implementation that comes in that actually works, you know. So go ahead.
I loved your talk, and
Thanks, man.
kudos to you for coming here and building a bridge between these two tribes, as you said, and
See how it works?
we're trying not to devolve into tribalism. But I wanted to ask you, how do you address what is, in my eyes, the discrepancy between being a paranoid crypto anarchist and using a completely open ledger that allows anyone to surveil you?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. So, I mean, you know this, right? Bitcoin's blockchain is not inherently KYC'd. It's pseudonymous, right? So if you use it correctly, you don't have to leak your personal data. I understand that that's not easy, right? So to me, it's a UX issue. It's not a fundamental issue. It's a skill issue, not a fundamental issue. I think that obviously Monero's privacy is better. I don't think there's much doubt about that at this point, definitely on chain. So, you know, and I think that the cypherpunks had a vision bigger than just privacy and anonymity. I think they liked authentication and cryptographic verification and encryption, right? So if you take a step back from the question of anonymity and you look at what's happened in the past decade, crypto has been, as a whole, has been the widest distribution of private public key cryptography in the history of humanity. And all those cryptographic key pairs can function to enable pretty much all the apps that we're talking about. And so that's cypherpunk, right? Like people have crypto keys. And as far as like privacy goes, yeah, like I've never told people to use Coinbase, never suggesting people go on ETFs unless they're entirely illiterate technically, in which case it's like, okay, maybe you're not gonna come on this train, you know? To the people that wanna sort of protect themselves from all these hacks, right? Which I think is a very good reason to like be concerned about this. Like without like, one thing is the anarchy and the ideology, another thing is like actually it's really insecure to give these companies your data. Yeah, there's different ways, and it's not easy, but there's definitely plenty of ways, and we have to build those systems better.
When you talk about onboarding 8 billion people, and you imagine a world where crypto is sort of the day-to-day, regular currency that everyone uses, we should bring it back to a physical level where people are transacting, and you're buying, your beer with Bitcoin or Monero, and you're interacting in the real world, so you're not hiding behind a computer, and you can say, oh, my address is not KYC'd, you don't know who I am, you're dealing with these digits. In the digital world, you're actually a physical being. So, I'm more concerned with the wrench attack scenario, for example. You pay someone for a service or an item, and now they know your whole balance or your whole history. And in a way, I see that, of course, Coinbase and all these centralized exchanges, I'm not a fan, but you actually have more privacy by sending some Bitcoin from your Coinbase account than from your self-custody account.
That's a good question. So here's the answer to that question. So there's two real privacy threats. There's the government, and then there's normal criminals, right? The government can see into your Coinbase balance, and they can $5 wrench attack you themselves, right? And they'll have really shiny wrenches, right?
They can 90% tax attack you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's one threat to model, right? The other one is like normies, right? Like normal criminals, right? So for normal criminals in Bitcoin, you use Lightning. Lightning doesn't expose your balance in the same way that Bitcoin does, like on-chain Bitcoin. Also, again, deep storage should be multi-sig, and multi-sig should be, distributed, and so that protects you from the $5 wrench attacks. You shouldn't be able to move all your money quickly, right? And in Bitcoin, we have multi-sig. I don't know if Monero has multi-sig. I don't think so.
Yes, it does.
It does?
Yes.
Excellent. So you can do it too, right? So that solves that problem, right? If you actually use the tools that are available, right? And we've done a lot of work in multisig. Multisig's advanced a lot, and there's very good software. Like Casa is a great wallet, for example. There's other implementations. Nunchuck, a lot more private, a lot more open source and hardcore. There's all kinds of different multisig wallets. So from a wrench attack perspective, just make it so that it's really hard for you to move your money. All of your money, right? And then you have concentric circles of security. You have your big pocket, your medium pocket, your small pocket, and then you pay in Bitcoin with Lightning, or even if they dox like one address, you can have a coin journey in the middle. Again, like there's 50 ways to do this. It's not that hard. Like it's hard, but there's tools. We have tools in Bitcoin. So it's just like the learning curve is a lot higher than Monero, and I wish it wasn't, but it is. So.
Thank you.
Cheers, man.
Good afternoon. Big shout out to Doug, Sunita for organizing this. We were here last year. Last year we presented sort of an overview of the back end and the front end of Basic Swap. And the purpose of this talk today is going to be to catch you guys up onto what Basic Swap is, and on the back end how it works for Monero, and also on the front end what it looks like, and also Basic Swap 1.0, which is a recent development that I'll get into a little later, and what that looks like for Monero as well. So basically, this is going to be how the talk is going to be set up. I'm just going to talk about a short recap for people that are not familiar with the application or the Basic Swap protocol. I'm going to talk about what we were up to since last year, as I mentioned, and then we're going to get more in depth about Basic Swap 1.0, more specifically with regards to advanced order management, the GUI improvements that are coming in tandem with that, and the market making tools that we have, and how all of this sort of builds into our intention, which is to bring the XMR atomic swap to something that is very accessible for people, and that normies, or sorry, I shouldn't, but people that are not as technologically savvy and that don't necessarily want to, go down the rabbit hole of anything, how it can be a very good and private and an option that makes sense even for the people that don't really want to get into it in the technical level. So very quickly, just a short background of how it came about. It's an offshoot. Basic Swap is an offshoot of the Particle project. We were trying to find this way to swap in a very resilient way. And this was on the background of XMR being delisted from several exchanges and other privacy coins being delisted. And on our quest to find something to integrate, we realized we had to build it ourselves, and we stopped at adapter signature swaps. It's the only way right now to do an atomic swap for XMR is through an adapter signature swap. And I won't go too in depth about the adapter signature swap itself. We had a speech last year at MoneroCon, so not this year's MoneroCon, the one before, where it goes in depth about, what's the difference between a classic atomic swap and the adapter signature atomic swap. And I just put 3 names here. It kind of started with Poelstra from Blockstream. He made Mimblewimble, was trying to find a way to interact with Mimblewimble, and he ended up creating the scriptless script protocol. So that's a whole other can of worms. All this to say, Fournier adapted his stuff to ECDSA curves, making it relevant for us today, for XMR. And Guger did the specific XMR, the pointed XMR adaptation of the Fournier contribution. So these are 3 names. If you're into, reading academic papers about that stuff, it doesn't get better than that. And we started, and all this to say as well that this is all relatively new technology. The XMR atomic swap is, about 4 years old, even as a proof of concept. And we started Basic Swap with that in mind in probably late 2021, mid 2021, released the open beta in 2022. And this is sort of where we were at when we came last year, which was, we had this order book already set up, and we had this system of how it worked. I'm gonna, just not to get ahead of myself, if you've never heard of Basic Swap, it's a protocol. It's atomic swap based, adapter signature based. Right now there's 9 coins. Big news, Bitcoin Cash just did a pull request, and probably it's going to be added in the next week or so. So soon to be 10 coins. It's open sourced, it's unmonetized. And it's we wanted to design as a modular piece of software to make it easy to integrate into other decentralized applications or even wallets or things like that. So it's meant to be a very modular protocol, and it's also an application, which if you go on Basic Swap right now, and I'll show some pictures, probably, yeah, mine as well right now. If you go on Basic Swap right now, this is the main portal through which you will interact with the Basic Swap protocol. So all this to say, you could, fork Basic Swap, or you could make your own view infrastructure to go through what Basic Swap offers you as a protocol. But right now, if you want to use it, the best way and the most complete way to do it at the moment is the Basic Swap application. It's a locally run, decentralized application. Again, it's unmonetized and it's open source. This is sort of what it looks like. This guy and this fella has 10 coins going. You can see, if you can read from all the way there, these are the coins that we accept right now. We included Bitcoin Cash. And this is what the order book looks like as of right now. That was true last year. It was true 6 months ago. And it looks like that right now. And the reason I'm saying it like this is because there's a lot of development right now with regards to how we want to display this protocol that allows for people to match each other in an end-to-end encrypted, decentralized way to perform these atomic swaps, which are extremely secure, extremely private, probably the most private way to swap almost every coin that's on there already. And so, you go on there, you have your nodes, and you can take a swap, or you can post your own swap. It's not displayed, but you can set up your own order and be like, hey, anybody out there wants to take my 10 Monero for 0.05 Bitcoin or whatever the exchange rate is. Quickly, this is the wallet page. So something that I should have mentioned as well is you could think of Basic Swap as a wallet in a sense, because you're running your own nodes and it's your coins on your wallets, and so you could see it as a non-custodial wallet that you have on your PC, that you're running on your PC through your node, and that allows you to perform these atomic swaps without necessarily having to like send them anywhere. So if you're already running a node and you think this is you like the ideas behind basic swap, and you think adapter signature swaps that it's interesting or at least cool, which I do, if you're already running your node, it might be something that you'd be definitely into. I sort of brushed over that already, but part of the reasons why the adapter signature swap became for us sort of like the best, it revealed itself to us as the best idea and the best design choice for what we were trying to do with basic swap was, first of all, it's completely decentralized in the sense that there's no third parties at any point in the entire app. So the entire thing is orchestrated by this end-to-end encrypted mixnet named the SMSG network, the secure messaging network. There's no third parties. It's a very elegant process. The adapter signature swap is nothing can go wrong, and it's very elegant. It's very complicated if you go into those papers. It gets into very hardcore cryptography, but the protocol itself is very elegant. There's no intermediate coins, there's no wrapped assets, and something that we thought was very interesting and very important is there's no conflict resolution to bash your head on the walls about and to contend with. So, and no public swap history, of course. There's no accounts as well. So you just get on there, you post the swap that you want to post, you take the swap that you want to take, and there is no accounts or something we want to work towards, maybe a reputation system or a private order books or stuff like that that could come into the release of Basic Swap 1.0. I digress. So since last year, since we came last year, and since even I don't know if anybody here was in Prague and at MoneroCon, but a lot's happened since, yes. And so we finally released the bidirectional XMR swap. If you're familiar with the adapter signature swap, you know there's a problem with regards to XMR, is you can only be the taking coin. You have to always contend. If you look at it in a bare bones way, you always have to contend with somebody else's conditions for a swap, which is not good enough if you want to do, a DEX, an atomic swap platform where XMR users feel like they can post their own orders and have the conditions for their trades met. We had to fix that. We found a workaround for it. So right now, as an XMR user, it doesn't affect you, this limitation of the adapter signature swap. We released the XMR Decred swap. We added our good friends at Monero, thanks to Offering XMR. Big shout out to Offering XMR if you're in the crowd right now. We added Litecoin MWeb support, which is still ongoing as far as development goes, and some basic liquidity tools. Again, some of Offering XMR's contributions came through that. And a few months ago, as some of you may know, we had the great honor to be put up on the Monero CCS by a large Monero contributor, and there was some debate about it. And what can Basic Swap do for Monero, and how can we move forward to make Basic Swap this product release, this production-ready release where people can plug in and use it in a way that's more convenient than it is right now, but also in a way that's a much more complete experience for users. And here I'm thinking about making it more akin to a centralized exchange, but never sacrificing any of what makes it so important and cool for XMR in the first place, which is the fact that there's no centralization at any point, and it's keeping in the spirit of extremely private swaps. So to get into Basic Swap 1.0, this is what we call Basic Swap 1.0, is the road that this funding by the Monero CCS opened up. And also, just a quick thank you to the 2 people that managed to donate to the CCS. One person got his foot in the door, and then the second man just cleared the entire funding limit. So thank you very much to this anonymous donor. And so just to quickly get into something I want to mention as well is there's a lot about Basic Swap 1.0 and where we're bringing it that's just boring as hell, and I'm not going to get into today. So there's a lot of API fixes, of code reformatting, of bug fixes of many kinds. Something I should have probably made more time for is the new install process. So we're going to have a more streamlined, more easier way to install the Basic Swap application or to play with the protocol even. especially for our Windows friends or Mac users, friends. It's pretty straightforward on Linux, I believe, at the moment. So some of the things we want to see, and actually, you know what, I'm actually going to skip this one and come back to it. We want to see a lot of backend stuff that's going to have a repercussion on the GUI, and we have to sort of support it through an experience, a complete experience for users of Basic Swap. So some of the things we want to see, private order book UI, some external wallet support as well is something that we're working on. A more integrated way of using these market-making tools, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that later, but to integrate it into the UI of Basic Swap to allow people that want to use Basic Swap to sort of use these tools to automatically take and post orders at with requirements and with specifications that are very intricate, have a sophisticated trading bot happen on Basic Swap itself on this unmonetized open source platform, right? So something we want to see rather quickly is, and that's very late in development right now, it's about to come out, is the quick swap page. So you saw the swap page from earlier, the classic one. This is something that will, you know, exist alongside of the classic swap page that we mentioned earlier. And it might take its place as the default way to use Basic Swap. So basically how it works is simply you put up, you know, you want to swap Monero for Litecoin, and you input the 2 coins that you wish to swap that you're running the node for, and it will show you on the right all the available swaps, a bit like a buy wall, and you can go through this buy wall, and eventually if you know you put a stop or something, and the next, you know, the more you go down on this list, which it auto buys it for you, and in parallel starts performing these atomic swaps in the background. It's all on the back end of how Basic Swap works, and so you can use this sort of this way of interacting with the Basic Swap protocol as a more straightforward, like, hey, give me some Litecoin for my XMR, and then if it doesn't, you know, if it can't find orders at a price that you chose after a certain moment, it can put up automatically a sell order for you on the Basic Swap network, just automatically through this secure messaging network that I mentioned earlier, always disseminating in an end-to-end encrypted and completely decentralized way. And this is how, you know, if you're following, this is how the order book comes alive. It's through this disseminating, this constant disseminating of information that this end-to-end encryption mixed-net offers. Something else we want to see sort of in tandem with what I just mentioned is a lot of advanced order management tools, in the sense that right now, the way Basic Swap is set up, you don't have that many options as to how you wish to execute your trade. Hey, I want to do a stop loss, or I want to market buy or market sell, or, you know, have a fiat-based offer. That's all stuff that's not available right now. That's something we're working on. And you'll see, I have a mock-up of, it's not, you know, the design hasn't gone through yet, but it sort of will give you a good idea of where we're heading with Basic Swap to, again, give it a more centralized exchange sort of experience for users. And so, you know, the way market buy, market sell could work. We want to see more order types, like I mentioned, and more options for this automation and this market making that I was talking about. Because in my view, Basic Swap is worth using for the values that it brings to, you know, resiliency of privacy coins, and you know, it's a full open source software. It's the kind of thing I think we should encourage as a community for XMR, which did, and also in the privacy world in general. But also, if you can make money out of it, that's appealing on another level for a lot of people. This is why for us, this market making idea is so important. It's a very early sort of draft of what a future UI for Basic Swap could look like. And this is not even on the dev branch, you know, it's very, very little volume on there. But the idea would be, if you were to select the coins that you're interested in trading, it would give you a different, completely different view of what you're dealing with, a bit like, you know, Kraken Pro or something. And, you know, the distinction between what they made, the new Kraken, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kraken, but they do have XMR on there still. And you'd have, you know, this depth chart that you can interact with and have sort of a more intuitive view and feeling of what this order book is looking like at the moment for, I have XMR and I'm trying to get Litecoin, or I have Litecoin on my wallet somewhere, and hey, I could really use more XMR because the pump hasn't arrived yet and it's probably coming soon. So back to this old one. Quickly as well, and the market making, I could see it being integrated into this sort of UI. But to briefly speak of market making, both in the state that it is right now and the state that we want to see it in the future. Of course, we want it to be able to automatically republish offers. Right now on BasicSwap, it's not something that's possible. And because of the way secure messaging works, your order isn't permanent until it's filled, or until, there's a timer on it, and the timer is about 48 hours. So when you post an order without a market making script and you're just on BasicSwap posting an order, if it doesn't get filled in 48 hours, it dissipates from the SMSG network, which is not, the SMSG network is sort of a 48-hour loop, not a loop, but it clears itself, kind of a 4chan thread, as more threads are being made. So automatically republish offers, define more intricate, more sophisticated pricing strategies, something you can interact with the bot with. Integrated market making and the trading tools UI. So this is, I don't have a mock-up of that, but it's something that we're working on at the moment, the BasicSwap developers are working on at the moment. And new ways to display all of that stuff. So right now, it's a CLI-based shell. This is just to show you guys sort of what's possible to be done on the back end of BasicSwap, and how it doesn't take much to view from that, you can make a UI out of this, and you can make it like very, very easy and very user-friendly for people to come interact with BasicSwap and with the BasicSwap order book in ways that is much more automated, and in ways that doesn't necessarily also constrain you to always trying to figure out what's the proper ratio of Bitcoin to Monero right now, and we have tools already integrated into BasicSwap for that, but we want to see, a specific price in euros, something that you could input, and it would, automatically sort of calculate through an API. That obviously a centralized API. We're not providing a decentralized API for BasicSwap. These are just tools for convenience's sake. And so it's the kind of things that we want to see for BasicSwap that could use some more centralized infrastructure from the outside, simply to make this decentralized and private peer-to-peer experience within BasicSwap that much easier for users. And so all of these items, this more sophisticated ways of posting orders, these changes to the GUI, these changes to how you interact with the BasicSwap order book, it's all, to us, this culmination of making adapter signature swaps a lot easier for people. There's a lot of setbacks to adapter signature swaps and atomic swaps in general. If you were there 6 months ago at MoneroCon, Luke Parker had a very nice talk about Serai, where he described his own ideas about atomic swaps and his love and problems with atomic swap at the same time. And the reasons why he didn't go the atomic swap route for Serai. And what we want to do really with BasicSwap is we want to take all these issues, these bothersome issues that really does constrain the atomic swap from what it could be, and chip away at them to make a very user-friendly and something that's fun to use for users. And it will never, there's problems with atomic swaps that we will never get rid of, but we can make it, we know we can make it better, and we know that's really the mission of what BasicSwap is trying to do right now. So eventually, in the spirit of this, we want to see and design some BasicSwap integrations, possibly in wallet providers, possibly for decentralized applications like the particle marketplace or stuff like that. We want to see, and that's something we hear about on Twitter a lot. I don't know if some of you guys here are harassing me on Twitter about a web-based portal. We do want to see a web-based portal at some point. Of course, you're sacrificing some level of decentralization and even of resilience, but as long as the back end of it is always this very radical protocol that will not take shit from anyone, is something that you can rehost or something. So we want to see a web-based portal, if only for convenience's sake, for a lot of our people that don't want to bash their head against the wall, like I mentioned earlier. We want to cut storage requirements. That's a big one. Right now, you, as I mentioned, have to run your node to execute an atomic swap. The reason why that is because that's simply how the atomic swap works. But you could do it with a light node, and you would also, at the same time, sacrifice a little bit of this level of decentralization and of trustless. It's completely trustless from start to finish. I probably should have used that word more. There's no trust involved at any point. Using light nodes would bring a certain level of compromise with regards to trust, with regards to decentralization, for the sake of convenience. But that's something we want to show and we want to offer to users as an opt-in option. Hey, how do I want to interact with this piece of software? You have some options from extremely paranoid or very privacy focused and decentralization focused and trustlessness focused to more of a convenient factor that you could have a range of options to interact with. We want more high-level privacy options for swappers. We want to get MWeb in there. We want to see MWeb swaps with other privacy coins to overkill it. At that point, why not? And we do want see Firo and MWeb be able to swap with XMR. And that's something that's not possible right now at all, and is something that we think we have a workaround for that would take a little bit of development, and that we're building towards with Basic Swap 1.0. But as always, like I said, it will remain this open source private swap hub, where if you want to have this purest experience of I don't want any compromise with regards to decentralization, trust, or security, that's something that's available to you on Basic Swap always. I do also want to briefly touch on, well, I mean, this is all Basic Swap, but to contributions towards Basic Swap. We're very, very thankful for a lot of the people in the Monero community that really stepped up and took an interest in Basic Swap for the value that it brings to Monero. And we hope today to communicate that and to, put forward the message that this is cool for Monero, this is useful for Monero, and this is a very resilient way to ensure that you can always swap Monero for something else. Stable coins are coming as well. I don't know if Dima Linux is in the chat right now, but I would love to talk to that guy. He's behind the design of the Ethereum XMR swap. I digress. That's the kind of thing that we want to see on Basic Swap, and we have bounties now as well. So this CCS funding that Basic Swap was very privileged to receive came with some bounties. So if you're interested in Basic Swap, if you think this is badass and you want to wrap your head around it, first of all, I encourage everybody here to give it a try at least. But also, if you think you could contribute to another level, to Basic Swap, to maybe the Ethereum swap, to maybe how to bring these other things that I mentioned into life, into this UI, and into a more user-friendly way to perform atomic swaps and adapter signatures atomic swaps in particular, please come check us out on Matrix, on Discord. It's a bridge chat. Come say hi. There's bounties. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you very much. Sir.
Just a quick question. There's these other atomic swap implementations or protocols. One is Commit, the other is Farcaster. How does Basic Swap differ from those, or are you able to make any type of comparison? Or
I'm not personally familiar with Mint.
Commit, I think.
Commit and Farcaster. Yes. I've heard of Farcaster, but very little. I can give you a distinction between. Are they HTLC swaps? Do you know?
Yeah, someone in the audience might know.
They're also adapter signatures. That's very interesting. Do they work about the same way? No, I'll have to look into it. But this is, the XMR Bitcoin swap is a semi-scriptless adapter signature protocol proof of concept that we took and put into Basic Swap and realized actually we can swap everything with this thing. We can swap Bitcoin for Litecoin, Litecoin for Firo. Any of the pairs that you can imagine that you can do on Basic Swap, you can do with adapter signature swaps and make them like dynamite proof, like super private. They look like one-way gifts both ways. There's nothing in the whole thing that even indicates there was a swap happening. There's no matching hashes. So if our good friend from FCMP++ is correct, these would also be instances of adapter signature swaps. So they would probably be very similar, because there's not 3 of them. This is very.
Thank you.
I'll look into it as well. If you can find me, or I'll find you later.
Yeah, it would just
love
be
to talk about that.
It would be very useful, or maybe it would be nice if they were interoperable in some way. So if there is a failure in one, you could maybe get your money out through the other, or just I don't know, if they worked in a similar way, maybe it would help with quicker adoption or integration into wallets and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that is a good point. I'm also sort of wondering right now, they have the same limitations with regards to XMR. So stuff like that. I'll definitely look into it and probably have a conversation with you about that later.
Yeah, and there's also a team of 2 people, I believe, out of Germany who are working on developing or popularizing atomic swaps through developing some applications. So
awesome.
That would be very interesting for you to
honestly, we're here for, we're Team Atomic Swap, so we're very open to all that stuff.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Fellow Canadian.
Yes, fellow Canadian. So yeah, I think I've been here last year, right? And I tried basic swap, tried to install it, so failed on my Linux laptop to install. I wonder, I send you guys emails on the support, and I did on X as well, so I never got any response. I don't even know if you fixed them. I was trying to use it, and it wouldn't even run through the installation process on Ubuntu.
So you had an issue with your install in particular?
Yeah, and then I saw and then I never get, you have a tech support or anything, so which actually works. So people, are there anybody?
I'd love to take a look after if you're around.
Sure.
Or did you try the Docker version? Was that the one you used to?
Whatever I got from a GitHub, just like the latest. The latest greatest, so it didn't load in. So just a bunch of errors and everything.
There's a few different ways to install it right now from the GitHub, and that's something we want to centralize and streamline for the 1.0 release. But right now, there's a very easy script by Offer and XMR that's available. There's the classic Docker install that's available. There's a non-Docker install that's available, and they're all 3 right now have official status. So it's a mess, but it's we're at this point in development, and we're not sweating too much.
No, I got it. So everyone is.
I'd love to hear more.
But I'm more concerned on the support side, right? So whereas would be nice to have a help, right?
Yes, the best place right now for support is really the basic swap chat.
Okay.
And that's a bridge between Element and Discord. So honestly, I'm often on the Twitter. I should have linked you this particular chat. I guess I did not see your message there, or none of my other friends.
That's okay.
But yeah,
okay.
I'd love to talk about it later. Yeah.
Okay, sure, no problem.
Thanks, man.
So Monero, without any smart contracts or scripting, you can't lock money up on chain. So with a centralized order book, how do you prevent someone from making?
The order book is completely decentralized, but this goes back to the limitations of the XMR Bitcoin swap that adapter signature swaps have that I was discussing earlier, which is there's no smart contract language. This is why they call them semi-scriptless scripts. The semi in this instance is XMR is the scriptless side, and the other side is the script side, essentially. What we've come to do is to enable this to enable this end-to-end bidirectionality to XMR, to allow you as an XMR user to post a swap. This is actually, I think it's this one. This one at the top is it looks like the Monero side is initiating. This is just a swap request. There's no difference on the front end for you, on the GUI level for you. It's to contend with the problem that XMR is always probably going to have with regards to swaps, which is it can't be first, but it can ask to be first. And if you can do that, there's sincerely no difference.
How do you prevent someone from modifying a client to fill the order book with bogus swaps, or just from taking all the non-Monero swaps without actually executing the swap?
Repeat that, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So what prevents someone from modifying the client to put up a bunch of bogus orders if you don't have a custodial Monero wallet?
Yes, and it's something we chose not to discuss too much today on stage, but the spam of the network is something that's taken into serious consideration right now. It's one of the open problems that we have a very straightforward path for Basic Swap, and what we think it's going to look like is a mix of, and that, you know, this is a hypothetical, basically. I don't know if this is actually how it's going to end up, but a mix of proof of work for if you really spam the network, it becomes, you know, a chore and a problem for you. And also identities and things like displaying the auto accept status of an order, or having identities and some sort of a reputation system once the thing grows larger and you have some, as a you know, anonymous user, you still have sort of a history of good swaps on Basic Swap. That's something we're exploring to assess this potential problem of what if someone wants to spam the network. We've been honestly dealing with it pretty well so far, and it's only the proof of work aspect of this solution is implemented right now for our decentralized order book. But yeah, like trolling the network, there's a concern of flooding the network to the point that you can't really tell which is a real swap and which isn't. That's a serious concern and something that's actively being assessed by the Basic Swap developers right now.
Centralized?
I'm sorry?
So it would be a centralized reputation system?
It would probably work through SM. That honestly, we don't know yet, and there's no development on a reputation system right now. My personal preference, with all of what I just said, would be something like a display of whether this given order would be auto accept or not. But with regards to these more pointed questions about spamming the network, you know, I'd refer you to Technovert or something, who's like the expert of all that stuff on the back end for Basic Swap. But it's something he's taking seriously, and from what I understand, has a path forward to addressing it.
I look forward to hearing about the solutions.
Thank you.
Hi, a comment on that same topic. So yes. One of the limitations of Monero today is that you can't pre-sign a Monero transaction. So like if I send my Monero out, I can't have in my back pocket a transaction that is then refunding that transaction back to me. It has to be on chain first. And that's just a limitation of Monero's current protocol, the way ring signatures are constructed. And then with full chain membership proofs ++, there's the idea that you would be able to construct the membership proof in the future, even after that first transaction goes on chain. And so that would be this concept of transaction chaining should definitely help for this that particular process.
I was very excited when Luke mentioned that yesterday. Yeah, cool. And I talked to Luke a little about it, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to think about that." But yeah, that's a great point, and thank you for contributing.
Got it.
Thanks. But is that it?
That was it. I just wanted to make sure you're aware.
Yeah, I loved hearing it when Luke was talking about it. I was piqued my interest immediately.
Do you know? Woo, yeah. Do you know off the top of your head the approximate volume that's in the Bitcoin XMR pair?
Completely impossible to tell. Like as far as like how many trades are happening,
or how much volume there is of liquidity that somebody could.
You know, it's this thing where you have, and it's the way it works right now, and we want to bring it to a different level, especially with the use of these automated tools that I was talking about. But right now, it's like your trade, you post this, you know, and I don't know how old it is. Well, I mean, posted 9 minutes ago. Well, this particular listing that was posted 9 minutes ago still has 47 hours and 51 minutes before it expires. So how many of these actually got taken? How many are being reposted? How many you know, are being reposted after selling, you know, after matching with 3 people, with 4 people, with 0 people? It's all on this end-to-end encrypted mixnet where if it's not your business, you can't assess whether it's taken or not. So that's part of and that's by design, by the way, but it comes with some serious serious question marks with regards to how much liquidity is on there. I can speak by personal my personal experience with Basic Swap is every time I've actually had to use it to make a swap that I wanted to perform, I've always found somebody with enough liquidity on his offer with a number that made sense to me as far as, he wasn't ripping me off. That's for me as a admittedly biased, but sincere, I'm being sincere, I've used it maybe 4 times in the past month, and all 4 times went extremely well. So it's the kind of thing that, come play with it, come check it out, because it is cool, you're doing an adapter signature swap, it's pretty badass. And yeah, it's hard to tell.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Nice talk. If I was to consider running your market maker script, putting up an equal amount of Monero and pick a surveillance chain, Bitcoin, I don't know.
Yeah.
How concerned should I be about Basic Swap or any other atomic swap being used as a dumping ground for tainted coins on the surveillance side?
And I'm reminded of, again, Luke Parker, who got this similar question 6 months ago in Prague. This is, as far as tainted coins, we're completely agnostic about it. We don't have we're not outsourcing this thing where it says like, oh yeah, this is a tainted coin or not, because a tainted coin is tainted by virtue of, you make your own sort of algorithm as to what constitutes a tainted coin or not. It's not, literally tagged as tainted, and we don't have our own script for it. We don't want to identify and have a rule for it, what's tainted or not. As far as tainted coins go, it's completely agnostic. With regards to tainted coins, something that we're excited about that could sort of assess what could be seen as a problem on both Serai and Basic Swap would be, again, some kind of reputation system, some kind of a private order book system where you can have your own order book that you share your key with, and you're known as a person that doesn't trade tainted coins for maybe a markup or something. So that's something that's it's not something we want to even really start discriminating about. The taintedness of coins is something we're coin agnostic or agnostic about, as Luke would put it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, we're a little late starting, so I think we might run beyond that, but we'll see. So first off, we have a lot of people on this panel from a lot of different backgrounds. Would you mind just quickly introducing yourself, why you're here, and who or what project you're representing?
Yeah, hello. I go by Woodzer. I've been working on Haveno, the peer-to-peer decentralized exchange, and also maintaining some libraries for Monero in the languages of Java, TypeScript, and C++.
Hi, I'm Felix Cangrejo. I'm a contributor with Basic Swap, and just a general atomic swap enthusiast and Basic Swap advocate.
Hi everyone, my name is Paul Pui. I'm CEO and co-founder of Edge. We're a multi-asset trading app, big focus on self-custody and privacy. I think we've had Monero support in a multi-asset app since like 2018, so we're one of the first, if not the first, to support Monero and swaps to and from Monero across multiple assets. And I'm here because I definitely want to learn more about the Monero community, but also contribute and help give people an idea of what's going on.
I'm Dimi, I'm 2049er. Developer of Moneruyo. I'm here because there was an empty seat.
Okay. I'm Vic Sharma. I'm the founder of Cake Wallt. I founded Cake Wallt to make it easy for everyone to use Monero. It was pretty complicated back then to use Monero, so I just wanted to make a very nice, simple, clean app that everybody can use. And of course, since then, it's become a multi-asset wallet. And yeah, thank you all. It's great to be here.
Can y'all hear me okay through this mic? Just want to make sure it's loud enough.
There we go.
A little louder. How about now? Any better? Check, check, check.
Dealing with the feedback.
Still sounds quiet, but.
2 mics.
Check, check, check. Yeah, we'll roll with 2. That's plenty. Okay, so we have a ton of different backgrounds. I mean, we have the fiat to Monero arbitrated swap. We have atomic exchanges, which are atomic swaps, which are the most trustless way to do this. We have centralized exchangers, which trade a little bit of trust for a lot of user experience benefits. So we have a lot of different backgrounds here to cover, but I think the way I wanted to start it is we're all passionate about Monero, a lot of us from different backgrounds for different reasons. So I'd like to hear kind of why you got into the business or building projects or protocols around allowing people to access Monero. Like, why do you view people being able to easily exchange between Monero and other cryptocurrencies as a thing that's important enough for you to dedicate a lot of your time to?
Well, I mean, when I saw the flaws of Bitcoin, I was like, well, Monero answers that. I was like, well, great. I want to build an application in my browser that uses Monero. And I found out that there was nothing like that. And I wanted it to be as simple as, you know, is there a software library where I can just call wallet.getTransactions and see my transactions? Nothing like that existed. So I started writing that, and that has been just ever since. That's where I went, yeah.
Speaking on behalf of Basic Swap, or a lot of the people passionate with Basic Swap, we started with the idea of creating this very resilient way of having these privacy coins stay alive. And we were facing a lot of, we were looking at a lot of delistings. We were very anxious about that. And XMR to us was the flagship privacy coin. And if any coin is to resist and to be the tip of the spear of this, try to resist this problem of delistings, XMR probably would be it. So we wanted XMR on there right away.
So we came from an angle of what was available at the time. So in 2018, the only thing that was available were more CeFi exchanges. Think Shapeshift, at the time definitely innovated in that regard. DEXs and whatnot and atomic swaps weren't very feasible, but we knew we were in a multi-asset world. I came from the Bitcoin world, kind of entered into Ethereum, love the privacy of Monero, but realized we're not going to be Monero only. We're going to need to give people the ability to go between different assets. And one of our missions is if we get people using these tools quicker and faster, as opposed to waiting for the technology to come, get people into Monero, even if it's through the CeFi options for now, adoption helps kind of shield us against a lot of the attack vector. I like to say if we can get everyone using Monero, even if we don't have the perfect tools, for a government to shut it down means shooting themselves in the foot, because you're shutting down your own economy. So once we can actually build economy around these cryptos, especially Monero with the privacy, then that is one of the most powerful shields we can build, in addition to the cryptography and then, of course, the more resilient exchange functionality that it could have.
So 2017, a friend of mine introduced me to blockchain and crypto, and I thought it was crap. And then I researched it and was like, well, this is cool. And privacy and freedom are important to me still. And the Monero community was looking for a mobile wallet. I said, oh, a new hobby, let's do that. So yeah, we decided to be Monero only, or I decided to be Monero only. And the community came up with a couple of designers to make it a viable wallet, which it is now. And at some point we saw, hey, but if there are other crypto around, so we need to make these changes. So yeah.
Yeah, I got into Bitcoin around 2013, and why I got into this and building a wallet for Monero. I guess a lot of things I build is just from my own experience and things I see that are missing and the problems I have. So I got into Bitcoin in 2013, then in 2016, I kind of really realized how transparent Bitcoin is. And that was, I think many of you heard this story many times. I sent Bitcoin from my Coinbase account to a darknet market address, Alphabay, to be honest. And I was buying antibiotics. It's not like I was buying, something crazy. And Coinbase immediately canceled my account. I got an email, you have violated your terms, blah, 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 and they canceled, moved all your Bitcoin away. And that's what kind of hit me right then, that, okay, how did they know? Like, how did they know where the heck I'm sending Bitcoin? And just took me down the rabbit hole there. And at the same time, when I got kicked off, I saw in Alphabay that there's this other cool little, and I'd heard about it before, but there's another currency that everybody's using called Monero. And I was like, why not Ethereum or Litecoin or whatever that was popular back then? And just went down the rabbit hole, and there was nothing on iOS, and kind of the same thing it just wasn't there, it didn't exist. And just started this thing. I basically built it for me and then put it out, and then it got popular, and got accepted by the community. So that was my goal.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's always drawn me to the Monero community is that there's generally not a everything has to be Monero only focus, and I think that's why we see exchanges being a key aspect of the community, where some of these especially are community created things. We realized there was a need for atomic swaps. A lot of people jumped into that. We realized there was a need for fiat to Monero when projects like Bisq weren't listing it specifically, so the community jumped into that. Woodser's been driving that, and it's been awesome to see how all of these different gaps are filled, because I feel like these different approaches have different sets of trade-offs. But the thing that I kind of want to ask y'all, and whoever wants to jump in can, don't all have to answer if you don't want to, is just, do you see these different approaches having a symbiotic relationship long-term, or do you view some of them as just a temporary holdover until some future thing becomes possible? So maybe comparing between atomic swaps, arbitrated fiat to Monero, on-ramps, instant exchangers, things like Sarai. There's a lot of different approaches that each have different trade-offs. Do you view them all as continuing to exist symbiotically long-term, or do you feel like it's something where we're going to eventually kind of settle on one specific route?
So, I mean, it would be one thing if these centralized exchanges, if we had no problem with centralized exchanges, they give the best experience and everything, then that's we can just continue on with that. But that's obviously not the case. So given that, then right now there's different types of technologies which are trying to provide an answer to that. So from my view, just the more answers that we can provide, the more options that we can provide to people, the better. I don't know. I think it remains to be seen if some great piece of technology comes out in the future which sort of unifies everything. But for right now, I just think the more options, the better, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I guess on the fiat side, it's a little different too. When you're talking Cavino with going from USD to Monero, that's a totally different ballgame than when we're talking crypto to crypto, because that's very different and still very possible on the centralized side, where fiat to Monero is practically impossible and getting harder every day.
I just wanted to say that the decentralization of it, the fact we have all these different projects, has a health of its own, and I think needs to be cherished and nurtured. So hopefully, we get to all provide these different solutions, contribute to the decentralization of the XMR community. What makes it so strong, I think.
Let me throw a wrench into the discussion. We kind of went through a few different options in the Bitcoin era. We actually did try atomic swaps in the Bitcoin era, and they functionally worked, but they did provide some trade-offs in user experience. And then in the Ethereum world, we tried to go into direct on-chain order books, and funnily that didn't work from the viewpoint of scalability and being able to change orders. Nothing in the DEX world really launched until AMM's automated market making, order books, which are not really order books. And so fundamentally, I feel like anything prior to that is a stopgap. We need it until we get to AMMs. And so I value that they exist, but I wouldn't recommend it to any of my friends who are normies. Right? The user experience just isn't there. An AMM, a normie wouldn't even know that it's an AMM. It feels near exactly the same as a lot of the CeFi experience. And really that should be our mission. If centralized companies can offer the service with a certain UI, that is the North Star that we should be shooting for. Anything less than that is a stopgap. So to me, that's what we're going for. And then, can we exceed that? And I think we fundamentally can exceed that because, we're permissionless. And I'm talking about the crypto to crypto side. To answer the same question on the fiat to crypto side, fiat's going down. Join the anti-fiat crypto club. We won't need this fiat to conversion in the future. We're just all going to be trading, at minimum, a stable coin to Monero, and we're never having to deal with the banks.
Yeah, I agree with you. We actually made an atomic swap with Monero a couple of years ago, and the user experience was just horrible. So we let that be. To answer the question, I think the potpourri of options will be around. Depends on how governance works in jurisdictions. So there will be more vices. So some things will die out because it's just too cumbersome, and the rest will prevail, or maybe they'll move to other jurisdictions where it's possible for some time. So it's difficult to say, but lots of options I think are a good idea.
I agree with everything everyone said. But one of your questions was, is one of these projects going to win out? I think it's too early to tell. I think we need to support every project. We need to let them run and keep improving user experience. I mean, especially in Cake Wallt. I mean, user experience is number one. And the level of privacy that everybody wants, it's different for everybody, right? Some people are happy with centralized exchanges. They're like, I don't care. Here's my Bitcoin, give me my Monero, right? For example. And some people don't. So the difficulty level that people are willing to go through to get their privacy, it's still a big challenge right now. And so I think that's why we need to just support all these projects and not worry about which one's going to win out, but let's keep improving all of them. Yep.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And just kind of to quickly add my thoughts, I kind of see them on like this resiliency spectrum where like usually if it has a much better user experience, it's less resilient. I think AMMs can be the exception to that. But usually they're less resilient. Like if a nation state decides we don't even want people swapping crypto to Monero, things like instant exchangers can be shut down. I mean, they're still companies, they have bank accounts, like they have things that the government can put pressure on, but atomic swaps, there's no way you're stopping that. It's literally unstoppable. And AMMs are very close to that at least as well.
While atomic swaps are unstoppable, the biggest challenge is finding the person that you can swap with. And so I'm not sure. The order book is pretty decentralized, I think, with basic swap. But I know the early implementations of atomic swaps were shut down because they were a centralized order book. So we kind of have to, ask the question, how was it implemented, with respect to how unstoppable it is.
For sure.
And also finding the price. Where do you find the price? So today, where do we find the price? Centralized exchanges. So
yeah,
difficult.
That's a good point. Yeah, we touched on this a bit because you mentioned AMMs, Paul, and I think we briefly mentioned kind of the concept of Sarai, but Luke wasn't able to be here for the panel, so I figured it would still be worth bringing up Sarai because it's a new thing that Monero's never had access to. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on cross-chain swap tools like Sarai, which is basically an AMM. It's similar to Thorchain, if anyone knows what Thorchain is. It's not the same, but it's a similar concept. I'd really love to hear how y'all feel like that fits into the ecosystem when it's available.
To me, I feel like this is a piece to the puzzle. So if you put these three things together, then you have a lot of options. So, all right, one is you can do like crypto to fiat using something like, and then, but then also having the Sarai to do cross-chain. That's a piece of the puzzle along with atomic swaps. So those three together creates the most robust options.
I want to make people a little bit aware of the trade-off between privacy and resilience, because I think there's actually a little bit of a trade-off. We have to give credit where credit's due, even to fully centralized exchanges. So Sarai's kind of patterned after Thorchain, and Thorchain mirrors what you can get from other services like think an XLix, prior a Shapeshift, Change Hero, which are these centralized swappers. But realize when you send a transaction to a centralized swapper, the only thing that shows up on chain, for example, Bitcoin to Ethereum, all that shows up on chain is a Bitcoin transaction, and then an Ethereum transaction. Nowhere on chain is there that this Bitcoin transaction wanted some Ethereum. And that's an exact polar opposite on Thorchain. This Bitcoin transaction shows in its memo, it wants Ethereum. Please send this amount of Ethereum to this address. So in a way, this resilience that we get from this cross-chain DEX horribly compromises privacy. Now, granted, a government can subpoena these private companies and get that information, but they don't get it automatically on chain, and no normie gets it. So there's a bit of that trade-off. Now, let's talk about Sarai. I wish Luke was here right now. To my understanding, I think if you're swapping from Monero, I don't believe you know where that money's going to go. I could be wrong about that.
My understanding, it'll still be linked between the transaction ID and the outgoing transaction ID. Like if you're going Monero to Bitcoin, it'll still be visible on the Sarai blockchain.
Oh, that this
that
ID.
This TX ID for Monero. Now you get the privacy that you get the privacy advantages of Monero, and that you don't necessarily know some of
Where
the
it came
details
from.
there.
Right.
But you do get the amount because you know how much of the transparent asset you got on
Correct.
the other side. So
And
you
definitely on
do
the flip
sacrifice
side-
privacy.
And definitely on the flip side, if you're sending Bitcoin to get Monero, that Bitcoin transaction has full public information on the fact that this was a transaction to purchase Monero with Bitcoin, how much, and what Monero address it would go to. So there's a bit of that trade-off, but regardless of that trade-off, the resilience, I think, is far, far worth the trade-off because of what was mentioned about the concerns of Monero exchanges getting shut down, getting blocked, being very regionally specific. So I'm still all for the DEX option and getting that rolled out as fast as possible and as widely adopted as possible and with as much liquidity as possible. So when Sarai does come out, encourage everyone not just to use it, but also contribute to it and actually provide some liquidity, which great for the Monero community, I think is one of the only opportunities we'll see to earn yield on your Monero.
Any other thoughts around Sarai? No? Yeah, those are very good points, especially on the privacy side. You do sacrifice some privacy because you're publishing so much details for the improved user experience and the resiliency. So just like everything in the space, it comes down to trade-offs of exactly what you need, and there are advantages and disadvantages to each thing. And I think a lot of times it starts where you start with the centralized exchange and you start to understand more about, okay, I care more about this privacy. I'm willing to undergo a little bit more difficulty. And you work your way down deeper to the most resilient, most private methods. And it ends up being, the exchange side ends up being its own rabbit hole, which is interesting. But yeah, for sure. And then last question I had for y'all, and then we can maybe open it up to questions in the audience, is just, what do you see as the future of exchanges for Monero? We touched on this a little bit, but maybe hypothetically, if you could have a specific type of tool for swapping Monero with other cryptocurrencies, what would that look like, or what would you like to have available to users?
Well, I think unfortunately at this point, what I kind of expect is I think centralized exchanges are going to continue to come under more and more pressure to delist assets or surveying or all of the problems that they come with. I think that's only going to continue. So what I would like to see is an alternative to these centralized exchanges that make it as absolutely easy as possible with the absolute best user experience. Yeah, I forgot where I was going from there, but yeah.
Something I find fascinating about Avino is this fiat element, which is it's an important niche, and it's very hard to replicate the sort of CEX. They're beholden to the law. They're beholden to the threat of you have to follow these rules, otherwise we will delist you or ruin your company. What I wanted to say with regards to more directly your question is maybe down the road, if we're using hypotheticals of where crypto is going, it's very possible that or I hope it would be possible. Maybe, and I'm very new to Schnorr signatures, but it's always been something I found extremely fascinating. There might be down the road ways to on-chain swap or on-chain exchange Monero for other things that would be a lot smoother than what we have right now. Because right now, to me, the biggest issue with atomic swaps is the transaction time, which is like a completely unsurmountable roadblock for having a quick swap. And maybe that's something that we'll see is not always going to be the case, and maybe things come in the future that will completely change the landscape of what we think is possible for swaps right now, or LLMs as well. But he's always going to have his own. You're always going to have this problem of how do we trade actual cash for Monero or for Alphabay balanced. So it's one of those things I think will always be kind of a niche that we'll always have to contend with.
Not always. I still say fiat's going down.
Yes. With that caveat. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I have two asks out of the entire exchange ecosystem for Monero, and I think that I'm at least really happy. Number one, once Sarai's launched, and maybe there's other equivalents to Sarai that launch, some of the more advanced order types that you would see in a centralized exchange, so that we can more thoroughly compete with the centralized exchanges. Think like the limit orders, stop limit orders, market orders, so that people have less reason to use the centralized exchanges. And then number one, the privacy that is still missing. And I encourage people to look at this one project. I was a big critic of a DeFi privacy protocol secret network. So they've definitely got some flaws. However, there is a cross-chain DEX launched on it that at least facilitates a significantly higher level of privacy when you create the transactions to go from, I think they only support EVM chains right now, to go from ETH to USDC on another chain, where the fact that you wanted to swap from one asset to another is hidden. Now, it's hidden in a way that I think is subpar to a Monero, but Monero can't do like DeFi transactions. Having Monero support in a protocol like that, or maybe even better in something like DarkFi, where we can then enable a much more private trade between the different assets, that to me completes the picture. I'm happy at that point, because what else do we really need from that viewpoint that we can't do with maybe, I don't know, bridge to another chain, some DeFi protocol and whatnot. But otherwise, I'll stop there and just start driving people to use it.
Yeah, I think the hard part in a lot of those is that you have to give up custody to use them, though. Like, that's how Secret was when they had Monero support. As far as I know it, that's how the bridge to DarkFi would work as well. So that's the tricky part, is when, especially with the limited scripting capabilities on Monero, limited meaning none, it's difficult because there's not a way to have a trustless bridge between the two. So it's tricky. I know we're talking hypotheticals. So I don't want to shoot down your hypothetical, but just a point to raise there. What about y'all two?
So, of course, I agree with you to have a decentralized, centralized experience with the liquidity there and with sub-second transaction times on exchanges. Yeah, so if I can wish for something, this is what I would like, with an API which is clear and stable and, well, there.
I mean, I think you said it all. Nothing to add, yeah.
One more question that I'll raise to y'all, and then we'll open it up to questions from the crowd. I'm just curious y'all's thoughts around viewing Monero as being symbiotic with other cryptocurrencies. I would think probably everyone on this panel views it similarly, but something that I've seen sometimes get pushed back on in the Monero community is that we need to do everything for Monero within Monero. We shouldn't worry about like focusing on integration into Bisq or helping Bisq with a Monero integration or something like that, because we should just do it ourselves. That's a one-off example, but just that sometimes we can get kind of stuck in this silo of everything has to be Monero, we shouldn't worry about other things. Whereas I think there's a lot of symbiotic relationship between things like Bitcoin and Ethereum and Monero because of the possibilities that it opens up for users, and that, like I think you mentioned, Paul, it's a multi-crypto world. I think if we're honest, that is just the case today. So yeah, if y'all have any thoughts, throw them out there about kind of how Monero should be symbiotic with other cryptocurrencies or not, if you feel like it should stand on its own and do its thing.
So Monero should only be traded with Monero. I'm joking.
Monero swaps. Yep. True fungibility right there.
And you know, I mean, I of course I'm saying that as a joke, and I joked about it on Reddit before when Havina was adding other coins and people were flipping out, and I said yes, Monero should only be traded with Monero. So yeah, I agree. We live in a multi-crypto world, number one, and number two, with Monero getting delisted everywhere and harder to have fiat on-ramps, at least in Cake Wallt, and I think all three of us can attest to it, people are buying other crypto and switching to Monero. So yeah, I think we definitely need to support other coins. You know, even, I know no one's here, but even like a Zcash, you know, it's better somebody buys Zcash on Coinbase and finds even an instant swapper today that supports shielded Zcash who swap it to Monero. Why not? So yeah, I'm all for supporting other coins to do that, because it's happening today. People are using other coins today. Yeah. So.
What he said.
Yeah, you're saying the same.
I'll take the short term, yes. And I think supporting a coin could become from kind of the wallet world. Of course, we're going to support a few different coins, but from the viewpoint of like the Monero ecosystem and its effort to integrate with other chains, I've always thought there was like 3 to 4 primary use cases for blockchains. The Bitcoin community will call the store of value narrative. And then you have a payments narrative, which I think needs to be private, and that's Monero. And then you need the programmable narrative, which has not yet deployed a good private solution. Hats off to DarkFi to getting launched and I'd love to see what really comes out of that. But with those three main use cases, the bridges between those, I think, are pretty key long term. I think the weakest one being store of value, because fundamentally you have any utility, people use it, that will become store of value. But the programmability, if that proves to be sufficiently hard on Monero, then that's the effort that I think the Monero community needs to continue to have, is that bridge to programmability, so that we can do things like not have to sell our Monero and possibly take out loans against it, right? There's that old adage, I'm never selling my Bitcoin. No, but you kind of are, right? Well, we can't do that with Monero. I literally have to sell the Monero. So that DeFi component, I think, is really key. And so keeping that open communication and collaboration with the programmable side of chains, I think, is the one piece that will need to continue in the long term.
Yes, I think this symbiotic relationship is like the pragmatic view, and I think will remain the pragmatic way to see it for a long time. And also, I want to mention, even in the crypto no white paper, they mentioned explicitly that this symbiosis is mentioned in the crypto no white paper from the get-go. Of course, they're trying to. It's a whole other context, but I think it should be true to Monero, yeah, the symbiotic relationship with these other coins.
Yeah, just agreeing one more time that we do live in a multi-currency world, and this crypto and blockchain tech, it provides all these capabilities like permissionless payments, cheap fees, sound money. So also these other currencies, they're providing an easier experience, than Monero. So I do see a symbiotic relationship definitely existing there, but I can see and hope that Monero can provide a layer of privacy. So like, even for all these other currencies out there, Monero can be something that provides a layer of privacy even to swap among them. And that's symbiotic.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you all. I'll open it up to questions. If anyone in the crowd wants to hop up, there's a mic in the middle. You can jump in and ask questions. If it's for a specific person on the panel, go ahead and mention that. If not, we'll just field it amongst us.
Hey guys. Thanks so much for the panel. I've been really enjoying hearing, the idea that we need more options, right? Understandably so, with Monero constantly being delisted. And I had a bit of a shameless shill. I'm Forrest from Squad Swap. We're actually sponsoring the event. And I want to say there is another option as well. We've recently helped someone set up a bridge so you could wrap your Monero and use it on BNB chain and use it on Squad Swap, our DEX, and it offers another opportunity to earn yield on Squad Swap by providing liquidity as well.
Cool.
Hey, so I just kind of had an idea and something that I think could improve the user experience a little bit. I don't know to what extent this already exists, but I think pre-built images would actually, that already have a lot of the tools like Havano installed, would actually be greatly beneficial to the user experience, just because then you could take just a flash drive and you could do it for your friends or your family or whatever, and whether you do it via a live image or actually install it like all the way onto the computer, it would make it a lot easier than having to source and download multiple different applications. And then you don't have like a templatized image, so you could have different non-standard problems with like, oh, I'm running Debian or I'm running RHEL or whatever the case may be. So I think something like that could actually be greatly beneficial without having to do too much development, because making a templatized image really isn't that crazy to do. So wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so just to clarify, do you mean something like if you had a like Tails bootable image that you had Havino pre-installed, Basic Swap pre-installed, these kinds of things, so you could boot it up and have access to all of these immediately? Is that like the type of thing you're thinking of?
Yeah, so you could do it that way. You could also do similar to like a Docker image, or you could do like a LVM image, whatever the case may be. But I think something like that would really simplify it to where you just say, hey, I want to use Monero. I'm just going to download this image. All my tools are already preloaded. Now I can just get started.
Is this for a normie? Did you say Docker?
So that's why I was talking about the USB images, to where you can just literally just buy.
Shouldn't
like
just
a USB
be in the App Store and I just like click a button, get. That would be my like North Star.
Yeah.
And if we're not there, then we got to get there, or just install an app.
And I think I mean, there's also kind of different target demographics too. Like I think there's the normie target demographic that I think like Edge, Monero, Cake are really targeting, and there's the next step that things like Basic Swap are targeting and Havino are targeting. And I think there's definitely an importance to making that next step as easy as possible, because it's not just normies and extremely technical users. Yeah. There's this whole spectrum, and the more people we can allow access to those more advanced tools is really important. So I definitely think the idea is valid. I think there's already a Tails distro with things like Bisq preloaded, that sort of thing. I think someone builds a pre-built image of that. It's like Details or something, or B-Tails, I think. But yeah, I think that the concept is definitely valid, and we want to serve each spectrum of users well to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, and to your point about normies, it could also just be like a app that's just like a suite of other apps. Like
that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Like almost like a Microsoft suite, but for us in this room.
Yeah, Microsoft Suite, but not like terrible.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for the question.
Seth, if you could just grab the question off there, we'll just start trying to take these as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a question from Shortwave Surfer 2009. He said, could Havino, et cetera, get prices from Sarai or Basic Swap and vice versa? Havino checks Sarai and Basic Swap for price. Basic Swap checks Havino and Sarai. Sarai checks Havino and Basic, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, I think he's meaning, could we basically create a swap provider we can utilize each other to get a price and settle on that price? I'm not sure y'all's thoughts.
I mean, it certainly is possible if these other exchanges like Sarai, if they offer an API and you can access the prices, then it's certainly technically possible to pull those prices in. And then the other part to that is, we hope that our order book becomes so liquid in the future that it provides its own price. It sets its own price. So.
Where are you getting the price now?
Currently, we get the price from a basket of centralized exchanges.
Any other thoughts on that question?
I mean, price is just whoever has the most liquidity. And so I think Sarai, I believe fundamentally it will have enough liquidity for people to rely on it for price. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be a really good fit for that. We'll field one in here, and then we'll go to the next question on the screen. Go for it.
Okay. Hi, Woodser. This is kind of Havino specific, I guess. I'm the annoying fanboy who begged you to add goldbacks and precious metals as a locally accepted currency. I'm sure Aaron Day could go on for 23 hours on why that's important. I'm probably severely outnumbered in this room at the moment, but not outside of this room in the experience of like trying to get in and out of Monero for whatever reason. I'm trying to get in. They're trying to get out. But can you speak to what it would take and how long it might take and what the funds might be required to get a app that any normie could download from F-Droid or the Apple Store or Google Play? Without a laptop. 69% of the world has smartphones but no laptops or desktops.
No, it's a good question. And that's why, what we're starting with is that normies can download an app and use it on their phone, but to begin with, it's going to be linked to their desktop. Unfortunately, it's very technically complicated to take everything that is within Havino right now and make it run standalone within the mobile phones. I mean, you have different binaries there, which are requiring C++ as well as requiring Java. So right there, you run into problems with iOS. So to get it to be standalone is definitely going to be a big hurdle. And right now, I'm not clear how that would even work.
Really quick follow-up question. Since the crypto exchanges are all taken care of, I'm talking about like actually in the real world trying to get in and out of cash while we still have it. We'll always have gold and we'll always have, well, maybe not goldbacks. We'll always have precious metals. But in the physical meat space, maybe is there like a light wallet that could be downloaded that could make that happen faster? Does that make sense?
I'm sure it's technically possible. The complication there is that you've got to create a multi-signature wallet and run it right on your device. So if you want that to be standalone, that means you need to have the entire software stack to create that multi-signature wallet running on your device and also communicating with the Tor network. So that's still where the complication is. Now, with that said, though, we do have an independent contributor who I'm sure would love to talk with you, Qubit, and he has got his eyes on that next goal of trying to make it all standalone. It just runs on your phone. Nothing more to think about.
I don't know if, did you get that one?
Not
Okay,
yet. I
sorry.
was going to go to that next. Yeah. Yeah, next up from the feed, we have Satoshi Nakamoto himself reaching out to us. He says, is the ideological purity that makes XMR successful among cypherpunks a detriment to necessary adoption? And if so, how to bridge the divide? I think we could probably argue about the ideological purity or what that really means. I don't know if anyone has an immediate response to that.
I'll say no. It actually has been a positive. The Zcash community is going to hate me for saying this because I'm close with some of them, but I feel like they have less ideological purity, especially given that they expose transparent addresses, and they have not been as successful. Both in kind of general adoption on a per transaction basis or in market cap. So there's no metric by which they've been more successful. So I think the ideological purity here has actually helped a lot from the adoption. Now, we might not think that it's enough adoption, but it's definitely beat all of the other privacy protocols.
Yeah, and I think maybe ideological purity is maybe too harsh of a term. I think like the Monero community's blinders on focus on privacy by default for everyone is something that certainly should continue to be non-negotiable. And like you mentioned, I think that is a key reason why Monero just completely owns the privacy coin space, because it's done the best job of anyone in the space since it launched. And it's continued to stay laser focused on that privacy for everyone, even if they don't know what privacy is or care about privacy. So I think like ideological purity can have some weird other meanings, but maybe shifting it to more talking about the laser focus on user privacy.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It's the driving force. And at the same time, you see this panel, we're talking about others as well to get them in that direction. So.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't be driven by adoption, or at least the tech that is there should be focused on this ideology, purity, whatever it said, and then leave the adoption to people like us. So I think you can have both. Is it hurting the adoption? I don't think so, because I think it's not just the community just doing one thing. There's many different players. So I don't think it's hurting, because there are people like Doug who's formed this group, to increase adoption and get the word out there. So no, I don't think so.
I think it goes right back to the symbiosis idea. If XMR is going to exist symbiotically with these other coins, it has to stay true to what it's about, and its values, I think, is what's important here.
Yeah, and I think if we look at Bitcoin, I think we can kind of take this question of like adoption at what cost. I think should be what you ask yourself when you think about we want adoption, we want mass adoption. I think these two terms can be extremely poisonous to the long-term success of a project if they become the sole focus and you're willing to sacrifice everything else. And I think a lot of the stagnation we see in Bitcoin, and even the inability today to decide on simple things like covenants that could greatly increase the usability, the privacy of Bitcoin, is because there was such a focus for years on mass adoption at all costs that a lot of the core ideologies that made Bitcoin great have been lost in the community. And once you lose those, it gets incredibly hard to get them back. So I think whenever we hear that term adoption or mass adoption, you should think at what cost. And obviously I would love for everyone to be a Monero user, but if that means turning off privacy by default to make everyone a Monero user, is that cost worth it? I would argue no.
No.
Well said.
So gentlemen, I have a question. To the normie out there, the only function for swapping is to get gains, bro. How do you take something so highly ambiguous and confusing as the ability to swap in and out of cryptocurrencies, and as technical as it is? How do you explain that simply to the normies out there, why swapping matters? Could you give me like some kind of elevator pitch, any of you, that I can use to bring the message of freedom in swapping currencies to people who do not speak this language at all?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in, and then anyone else who wants to follow, feel free to. So the question, I think just to clarify to make sure I understood your question, basically, why do we need to be able to swap cryptocurrencies? What's the use for the average person to be able to swap between things like Bitcoin and Monero? Other than just number go up. I think the two big things for me are to enhance the usefulness of your money. So like Paul mentioned specifically programmability. If there's things you want to do, like take a loan out against your cryptocurrency, you can't do that with Monero. You can't do that with Ethereum. You can do that with Bitcoin now. There's some new ways to do that with Bitcoin specifically. So you can get access to different tools in your financial toolkit that we have in the legacy system that we don't have in Monero. And I think the second one is simply preserving value and making the most out of the value that you accrue if number goes up. And it sounds like trading, but what I'm talking about more is like Bitcoin pumped. Bitcoin's probably not going to pump forever. It might draw down, but I need money today to be able to spend. Maybe something like swapping into Tether, as centralized and awful as Tether is at its core technologically, for many people in the world, Tether is an extremely useful tool. So being able to swap from something like Monero to Tether to actually pay a merchant, to pay them in the currency that they accept is one of those powerful things in cryptocurrency. And just that ability to give people the money they want rather than just the money you have is something that has never existed other than if you go to a money exchanger, you swap to the currency, you go through this nightmare process. But now in 30 seconds, if someone wants Tether, I can pay them in Tether from Monero through Cake Wallt. It can be made very simple so that people can get the currency that they want, and I can keep the currency that I want at the end. So I guess those are three separate things, but y'all jump in if you have anything else.
No, I think that's exactly the point. Whoever has the most options wins. And in order to create those options, we need exchanges. And the receiver dictates what money they would like to have. So, yeah.
My answer to that would be a little bit more abstract, and that is that the way that I see money is money represents energy among people. And so we have all these monies around the world, and I want to see those monies be able to compete, because usually when you have healthy, strong competition, that's when the people end up winning from that competition. So in order to compete freely, you have to be able to exchange freely.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic point. Go for it.
I have a real case of use because I swap every time because I am from South America and the majority liquidity is in Tether. And if I don't want to use exchange, I go with cash and they give me Tether. Then I swap for Bitcoin or Monero, or the other way, I receive pays in Bitcoin or Monero and I need cash, I swap to Tether and I have cash peer-to-peer, not exchange. And this is the reality of South America, and we do a lot. And in my case, I swap every time, all the time, and he resolved a real problem for my quotidian days. I am from Uruguay, but in Paraguay, Argentina, it's the same.
Okay, any other questions out there? I don't see any more on the TV, so any other last minute questions? Yeah, we got one more.
I had asked earlier in regards to basic swap, but do y'all have any idea about liquidity, any DEXs or atomic swaps or Haveno moving a tenth of a Bitcoin worth of, or trying to buy a tenth of a Bitcoin worth of Monero or a substantial stash? I'm just curious. I'm going to try them out and see for myself, but y'all can give me a little. If you could give an idea of volume on any of these platforms, that would be helpful. Thanks.
So I can just answer speaking to Haveno that right now our limits are currently set so that you can trade a maximum of 96 Monero to Bitcoin, which translates to like, I don't know, around 0.15, 0.16 Bitcoin. And in the last few weeks to a month, we've started seeing quite a few trades hitting that exact maximum. So to the point where there's becoming a growing, people are wanting the limits to be increased. So the liquidity is starting to find its way to these platforms.
Yeah, there's a Twitter account for Haveno Rito. I don't know how to say it specifically, and they've been posting their volume stats as well. In a day, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, they were saying 2,400 Monero in liquidity right now is, we think, the latest figure. But if you go on their Twitter, it's Havino and then RETO. They've been posting regular volume stats.
Yes. That's across all the order books, anything offered, yeah.
What was that handle again?
I don't know the specific handle, but Havino, Haveno, and then Reto, RETO. I think it's like Havino_Reto, but my Wi-Fi is not working well enough to pull it up right now. So.
Question for Woodzer. Is there any way you can remove the requirement to have Monero in order to be able to trade? I think it's like 0.11. Is that?
It's currently, yeah, it's a 15% security deposit is the current requirement to be able to do a trade. So yeah, you get this chicken and the egg problem where if you want to buy Monero, you have to have a little bit of Monero to do that deposit. That's your question?
Yeah, so it's 15% of whatever trade you're looking to make?
Yep.
Oh, I see. With a minimum of 0.11 or no?
Minimum of 0.1 Monero, but there is an idea, a proposal to try to give people a way to do a trade without any Monero. And currently, the way that we're thinking that could work is that people can post offers that have a password. So, those password-protected offers would have a 0% security deposit. So if you give out the password to somebody, you can make a trade with somebody on Haveno with no Monero required.
That's a great idea. I like that. I hadn't heard about that.
I would just like to point out that if you're doing face-to-face trades, which we lost when local Monero shut down, you don't need to have the security deposit. And in general, I think Floss projects have a problem of leaving 90% of the value on the table by not putting in the 10% of polish on the back end for all the people who, like Grandma Moses, my Aunt Gladys, and me. So, severely underserved on-ramp at the moment because local Monero is gone.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much to all the panelists, all the fantastic questions from the listeners.
All right, guys. Hope you're all doing great. My name is Tuxsudo. I work for Cake Wallt. It is a pleasure for us to sponsor MoneroTopia24 as a main stage sponsor. And I got some stuff to show you guys today. I got a demo I'm going to try to do. Fingers crossed it'll work. So over the past year, we've been working on a lot of different privacy features. And of course, Cake Wallt, the main goal here is that we provide the ease of use, but also we like to be first for privacy features. And this past year has been quite a lot. We've implemented a lot of improvements for Monero. We've implemented silent payments for Bitcoin. We've implemented MemWeb for Litecoin. But we want to let you guys know that we haven't forgotten about Monero. We have a lot of Monero stuff. It's coming right around the corner. And I got some cool stuff I'm going to show you guys coming right up. So the first feature that's coming very, very soon is Monero hardware support for Ledger devices. So if you have a Ledger, you will be able to use Monero within Cake Wallt. And this will be supported on basically all the Ledger devices. It'll be supported on the Ledger Stacks, the Flex, the Nano X, and the Nano S, including iOS. Now this is a first. Oops, I guess, well, oh, there we go. So this is the first Monero wallet app to support hardware wallets on iOS via Bluetooth. So you can now use your Ledger app or your Ledger device with Cake Wallt via Bluetooth if you have an iPhone. If you have Android, you can also use USB, but this is great as a new option for users with an iPhone who typically can't use the USB connection. So we've got some recent upgrades that's been worked on over the past year. We've got a new Monero Dart wrapper that has made Monero syncing incredibly stable. Syncing from zero used to have some crashing issues. It is now super stable. I've never had a crash when syncing. That was a common complaint. That's been heavily remedied by this new Monero Dart wrapper. We now auto-discard sub-addresses for swaps. So Monero has had, and within Cake Wallt has had sub-address generation for quite a while. So if you receive funds into one address, it'll automatically generate a new one for extra privacy. Well, now we handle that with swaps as well. So when you swap in Cake Wallt, one of those addresses will be used as a refund address, and that could be a potential linking point between trades. If you hadn't received any funds in that address, it wouldn't have generated a new one. Well, now we automatically discard that refund address and put it in a blacklist so that a new one will be used in the future, helping to avoid any potential correlation scenarios between swaps with Monero. And we've also added some better organization for contacts, and you can now filter addresses easily. You can now hide them, and you can now order them better in the contacts address book. So, in the pipeline, we've got some really cool things coming up in the near future. Native Tor support for one. So Tor support will be available within Cake Wallt itself. You won't have to use Orbot or an external daemon. This will be great for people who just want to install Cake Wallt and immediately be able to use Tor without having to screw around with any external apps or programs. And then also reliable background sync for Android. Now, Cake Wallt used to have background sync. Unfortunately, the way in which it was implemented wasn't super reliable. However, it'll now be implemented using Android services that will be reliable, and unfortunately this will be Android only, as this is not possible in iOS. Go complain to Apple, I guess. They seem to be mean to people who just want to do some little tasks in the background. But this will be a thing on Android, which will make the Cake Wallt experience much better. So your phone will be able to intelligently sync in the background, so next time you open Cake Wallt, it should be fully synced, and you won't have to do that waiting game every time you open Cake Wallet. So, I present to you a new app called Cupcake. This is our new air-gapped wallet app for Monero and works with Cake Wallt using live QR codes. At the moment, it is only supported with Monero with the intention of adding support for other coins in the near future. Cupcake is an air-gapped wallet app. So air-gapped means truly air-gapped, where you do not connect it via USB, you do not connect it via Bluetooth or internet. You simply scan live QR codes to transmit the data across. So Cupcake is essentially an extra app you install on a separate Android device to act as a hardware wallet. Think about how you have a Ledger, you maybe have a Trezor, or even any kind of other hardware wallet. Well, this is turning an old Android phone into a secure hardware wallet that you can use with Cake Wallet at no cost. So Cupcake basically acts as the hardware wallet device, and it holds the private keys for you. And Cake Wallet will act as the online device that actually scans the blockchain and finds your outputs. And Cupcake will be the signer, and you will do this by transmitting the data back and forth, the transaction data and the signed transaction data between Cupcake and Cake Wallt, and I'll show this in a little bit. Cupcake is familiar. It's simple, looks like Cake Wallet, and will function similarly to Cake Wallet, except for it'll remove any features that requires internet, as there's no network access requested from Cupcake. Cupcake is secured, the wallet files are secured using a master encryption key that is derived using a unique key in the secure enclave alongside a user-generated PIN or password. Both of those are used to derive the master encryption key, so even if the wallet files were somehow stolen from the phone, you still need the user-generated PIN or password to unlock. And that's even assuming that the attacker could brute force the secure enclave that's used. And that's why we recommend to use a more modern device for this, as it does utilize the secure enclave. So like a modern Google Pixel or Samsung, it will fall back to slightly less secure methods of storing this, like ARM Trust Zone or a trusted execution environment, but it'll still be quite secure alongside having the user-provided PIN or password. What about iPhone? Yes, it works on iPhone. No network. So this is part of the point of having a separate app, is that there is no network required. Cupcake will not request network access, so there is no internet connectivity happening at all from Cupcake. It's fully offline. You can have this extra device that has Cupcake on it. You can keep it offline. You don't even have to have it connected to the internet, and it will do what it needs to do. So the first step is creating the wallet within Cupcake. You'll simply create the wallet like you do in Cake Wallt. You can add a passphrase for Polyseed, and it'll create the new file, or you can restore an existing wallet. And next, you'll want to scan the wallet from Cake Wallet itself using the Restore View Only QR code in the security and backup settings. And then you'll sync and you'll send. You'll sync within Cake Wallt itself. Cake Wallt will do the work of scanning all the blocks to see what outputs are yours. And once it's done, you'll be able to actually create a transaction. And then Cake Wallet, once you create a transaction, it'll generate a live QR code that you'll then scan from Cupcake, so Cupcake can receive the transaction data. And after that, you'll do the opposite. After Cupcake will sign the transaction and generate another QR code in which you'll scan from Cake Wallt that has the signed transaction data, which then Cake Wallt can send. And I will now attempt to do a demo. Hopefully this works. All right. So as you can see here, I've got Cupcake on the right, Cake Wallt on the left. I'll switch these on my side here. So this is right now on Cake Wallt. I have an opened wallet that was scanned from the restore only QR code on Cupcake. And as you can see, I have currently about 0.1 XMR. The balance is not currently synced across both of them. But if you want to create and restore a wallet, I'll go ahead and go through that process. You simply just go to the menu. It's very similar, just like Cake Wallt. Go to Wallets, create new wallet. It's going to make you type in a PIN. Very secure. And I'm just going to name this test wallet. And tap next, and it's going to give you your seed. You can write that down if you want. Probably won't be any funds that go to that wallet ever. And now you'll go to the menu once again. You'll go to security and backup. It'll make you put in your PIN. And you tap that restore view only wallet button at the bottom. And then from Cake Wallet, you'll go to the menu also. You'll tap wallets. You'll tap restore. And you'll tap restore from your tap scan QR code. And then you go ahead and scan the QR code from Cupcake, and now we're in that wallet, and it is syncing. Now, since the internet is terrible, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the wallet that I had that was actually synced already. Well, it's attempting sync. There we go, synchronized. So then, if you want to actually make a transaction, you'll take Cupcake here, or sorry, you'll take Cake Wallet. Once it's fully synced and you can see all of your balance, you can go ahead and make a transaction. So you'll tap send on the bottom, and you'll just go ahead and scan a QR code or put in an address. So I'm going to go ahead and scan myself over here from Cupcake, scan my own QR code. And I'm just going to do all, and I'm going to tap send. Moment of truth. If it doesn't work, I'll blame it on the internet, which should probably be accurate here. There we go. All right, we've got a confirm sending. I'm going to go and tap send now. And Cake Walt's giving me a live QR code. And as you can see, it's a live QR code. It's constantly changing, and it has to do that so it can send so much data across. And so from Cupcake, I'm going to go back. I'm just going to tap scan. And as you can see, it's got 16 QR codes it has to scan. And there's a transaction. I'm going to tap confirm. Confirm. Cupcake already signed it. And now from Cake Wallt, I'm going to tap continue. And then I'm going to scan the other side. And as you can see, it's counting how many QR codes it has to scan. If you miss one, it'll know which one you missed, and it'll wait for it to come back. And that was sent. Glad that worked. So Cupcake will be an easy way for you to have a hardware wallet using just an extra Android or iPhone. I know I said Android earlier. Yes, it is also for iOS. This is similar to some other apps I'm sure you've seen before, but with the ease of use with Cake Wallet, you don't need anything. You don't need like Tor or anything to download it. You can just get it from the Play Store, the App Store. Yes, it went live today, actually, as an early beta. So if you want to download it, you can scan these right here, iOS, Play Store. It is an early beta, so expect maybe some bugs. Feel free to give us feedback, but go ahead and try it out and see what you think. Obviously, you need 2 phones, but I know people usually have at least 2 phones. So the whole point of this being, if you have an extra phone, it's basically no cost to you to have a hardware wallet. And once again, I will recommend that you have a more modern device. That'll enhance the security. But even if you have an older Android device, it'll still be pretty secure. So a couple other brief things I'm just going to go over that have come out recently and are currently being worked on. So you can now get .xmr TLDs from Unstoppable Domains. So we've been working with them. We have a partnership, and we're now able to offer .xmr TLDs from Unstoppable Domains, and they are non-custodial. You are able to withdraw these into a Polygon wallet on Cake. Unfortunately, this is not on the Monero blockchain. That is not possible. But you can buy these, and you pay once, you own it forever. You don't have to renew every so often like you have to do with some of the other TLDs from Unstoppable. And second, Xano is coming soon, very soon. I did manage to receive the first Xano transaction on Cake Wallt yesterday from Gone Batfire. And there's a little hiccups, but it's currently being worked on internally. But we expect this to be out within the next month or so. So for all you Xano people, it's almost here. And thank you to the Cake Wallt, amazing Cake Wallt team. I love working with all these people. They're all amazing people. They've worked really hard on all these features and getting stuff before deadlines. And I want to thank Doug and Sunita for organizing this whole conference. This is a lot of work, and all the people currently working to make it happen. And thanks everybody for coming and also being able to make this happen. It wouldn't happen unless you decided to not come here. So yeah, with that being said, any questions? I guess the mic's right there.
Yeah, come over to the mic. So first off, I'd like to thank you for your environmentalism at Cake Wallet, giving people something to do with their old iPhones when they switch to graphene. That's powerful stuff. But my question is as far as hardware limitations on this, sorry, it's almost like it's my voice because it's always only me. I can't, I'm out of juice in the throat. My question is what is the hardware expectations for the maximum effective use of this hardware wallet?
Well, there's no actual requirements. I think the minimum SDK is probably like, let's see. The minimum SDK is like...
I kind of meant more like in a suggestion. Like, where would you set the threshold?
Okay, so like, I would suggest having a Graphene OS Pixel. That probably would be the most secure experience. Any more modern Android device that properly utilizes a secure element, and that would be modern Samsungs, modern Google Pixels, like the Google Pixel 6 or higher. For the best experience in terms of security, I would recommend having a Pixel Graphene OS, but any Android or even iPhone will work too. Like the iPhone also has a secure element that'll be used, that'll be quite strong. But once again, you've got two things going on there. You've got the user-generated PIN or password plus a key stored in the secure element. So even if you don't have a phone that has a super great secure element or has one at all, you still have got that user-generated PIN or password. And if you want even more security, you can use a really long password. And at that point, you don't even really need the secure element as much. It more provides convenience, making it secure while using a shorter PIN.
Hi, besides Xano, are there any other coins that you expect to be supporting in the next few months?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, I don't have any off the top of my head, and I certainly can't say any. I don't want to allude to anything that might not eventually be a thing. So, but
Okay.
Good question. Appreciate it.
I had an impulse question that I probably won't ask, and that is, how old are you? You are the young. Don't answer that one. You are the youngest fellow speaker that I've seen, and I just want to congratulate you for being so passionate, and this is important.
Well, no, I'll have to find out. I don't know if I am the youngest speaker. I might be. It's possible. It's possible. I'm 69.
This morning I tried to install Cake Wallet, and it isn't in the F-Droid. Are you guys? It is?
Oh yes. So you have to import. So at the moment, I had some PRs a while ago that I opened to add the Cake Wallet repository to default by with like Droidify. It didn't end up on there. I'm not sure why. But if you go to fdroid.cakelabs.com and you scan that QR code or copy the information, you can add the Cake Wallet F-Droid repository.
Okay, that was my question.
Cupcake will be on there soon. Oh, question for the audience. Oh, Aaron, how does the PIN/password come into play cryptographically with respect to seed generation? I don't think those two. So this would definitely be more of a question for the main developer of Cupcake. I don't think there's really anything that's being done between the seed itself and then the PIN/password. The PIN/password is simply being used to encrypt the wallet file. If you want to encrypt the seed itself, you can add a seed passphrase for the Monero poly seed. That is, does a strong seed password impact the effective? No, it does not. It does not.
Hey, so I know you're representing Cake Wallt in general, but on a personal level, how do you think the security of, say, a dedicated offline graphene, Pixel 8 or Pixel 9, compare against like a hardware wallet, like a dedicated hardware wallet? What's your opinion on that?
Ooh, that's a spicy one. I don't know if people have a lot of opinions about that.
Feel free to ruffle some feathers.
I like hardware wallets. Like I know there's a lot of upset from the Monero community for what Ledger's been doing with the Ledger Recover service. That kind of takes it into something that's being fully offline, non-custodial, into something that's partially in the party of other hands. So in that sense, I understand why you might want to steer away from that direction. So essentially, why you might want to use a Pixel, a Graphene OS Pixel for Cupcake instead of using a regular hardware wallet is that the Google Pixel is a much more widely used, looked at device. It has, in my opinion, it's probably the most, if not one of the most secure devices that you can possibly use is a Google Pixel with Graphene OS. Yeah, I know there's some concerns about, there's a cellular modem, there are proprietary drivers. Even like in the Ledger stuff, it's not fully open source. But there's a lot of OS level separation between these components, like a lot of OS level separation between like the cellular modem and the operating system itself. But from my own opinion, looking at the security as a whole, the Pixel also is a generic device. The Ledger is a specific device for something specific that could have more specific targeted attacks for trying to generate low quality seeds, or like just by buying a Ledger and getting it in the mail, that's sort of a risk in and of itself. It could be intercepted and modified in that way. And same thing goes for the Pixel, but because it's such a generalized device, and I mean this goes for any Android device or iPhone, because they're such generalized devices, there's a less likely chance to be a more specific attack against what Cupcake is providing, if that makes sense.
Thanks, man. Fantastic answer.
I think I got one more. Go ahead.
Hi, Tux. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
Lots of cool stuff going on. Apologize if this was already asked. I don't know but what kind of, do you know off the top of your head what kind of like encryption is or if there is between the QR codes? Because that, for someone paranoid who's willing to set up a hot cold wallet, that might leak some information, which transaction is being signed at that moment.
Yes. At the moment, I do not believe there is encryption between the QR codes. That's definitely something that we will look into in the near future, as there is another hardware wallet vendor, Keystone Wallet. They're trying to integrate with us, and they use encrypted QR codes. So that's something that we may look at in the future for Cake Wallt or Cupcake. It's a lower risk issue, but I do understand like where the concern could be, especially if you're in a public place and you're signing transactions. But yeah, good question.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. All right, I think that was it.